Hello, all you various forms of people. This is episode 106 of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast that goes by the identity of Look Out, Sir. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where I introduce my good buddy, Phil. How's it going, Philip?
I'm very good, thank you. I've returned from the rock.
From the rock, the island.
Exactly, the island of Gibraltar. I've battled many a people and an army, and I've returned, obviously not victorious, but I have returned nonetheless.
Spoilers, you are the victor.
In a way, but not the official one.
No. The real winner was fun, wasn't it, Phil?
Exactly. If the real winner was rolling dice and having a good time, and that is mission successful. That happened.
And, you know, whatever that hotel was that they made you stay at, they probably did all right out of it, didn't they?
The Sunborn, yeah. It's a big old boat that's also a hotel. It's very nice.
There you go. A bit of extra money in the off-season. Win-win.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Exactly. There you go. Well done them and all involved. But yes, that's because, Phil, you recently were doing what exactly?
I was fortunate to attend No Retreat X. Really, it's No Retreat 10, but they call it X. You know, in words,
Roman numerals, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So I got to attend No Retreat. Took my Krieg army because
oh my god,
spoilers. What else did I have? Because I'm still painting up my Minotaurs. But for now, I took my Krieg. Played 5 games in the tournament. Had a nice warm-up game. With Nick Goddard. He's a Krieger 40k on Instagram. He's got an amazing Death Guard army. Had a good warm-up practice game with him, which was really good as well. I mean, you're spoiling the whole segment, Phil. We were going to do a whole segment on this. Okay, well,
that was the actual plan. We got to do that. But before we do that, we have, of course, a 5-star review.
Come on now, Timmy. You've got your orders. You've got to do it.
But I don't want to, sir.
You've got your orders. Now get up there, get over that trench, and get me that 5-star review, and get it back here right away.
Okay, sir.
This week's 5-star review comes from where, Phil?
I'm going to stick to my guns. It's Apple Podcasts of Great Britain.
When he's right, like a like a broken watch. He's
exactly.
Right. It's twice a day.
I knew it would happen eventually.
Exactly, man. Stay true to your convictions, your plans, and one day you might be like Phil, correct in a rare instance. I thought, given that you actually, I think, said last week something to the effect of. Oh, no, I think maybe you did go Apple Podcasts of Great Britain. I think you diverted into Australia once, and I thought, oh, we might go back to Australia. But no, today it is the Britons. And of the Britons is an individual by the identity of Vegan Man 1961.
Wow. He's an old vintage.
Well, indeed. But that's the thing about being vegan, isn't it? It's a good, healthy life choice. If ever you want to elongate your life expectancy, not eating processed meat products is supposedly a good thing for you, isn't it?
Yeah. What was it? 1960?
1961, yeah. So he would be
over 80.
50 years old right now.
No, yes, because I can't do maths. Yeah.
Did you think he'd be 80?
I don't know how it happened, but I just counted in my head wrong.
Oh, fair enough.
If you've ever seen me pick up dice, I can't do maths or count ever. It's like 1.
That's fair enough, mate. That's
2,
fair enough.
3.
I saw the other day, by the way, I watched a really interesting Vanity Fair YouTube video where a gentleman who is employed to instruct casinos on the various ways people cheat. So, like, his job was basically to be an expert on all the different ways that people cheat. And he did like this rundown of all the cheating techniques that people employ when they're in casinos. And one of the things he was talking about was these tops dice or something. They were called T's. So basically they are dice that only have 6s, 4s and 5s on them. And they work on the basis that the human eye can only see 3 sides of the cube. So when they rolls the dice, they always come up with 4, 5s, and 6s. So it will be any of those results.
Brilliant.
So if you're running an army like Custodes, you got to get a few of these dice and sprinkle them in because,
Clearly.
well, you need those 4-ups. It's the way forwards,
Nice. That's.
I'm gonna be on the lookout for those now. Though I'm gonna be like, hang on a second here, turn them all over, see if it is, see what the deal is.
If you think about it, there's a lot of weapons at D3 plus 3. That dice is perfect for that roll.
Yeah. That'd be pretty amazing. Maybe I need to just buy some and sprinkle them into my collection. Add a little bit of spice to the whole thing. But anyway, this week's 5-star review comes from Great Britain. We do well, Phil, in the Britons. I've not said that for a while. Vegan Man, 1961, not 80 years of age, but obviously doing well all the same. This review reads, more Richie, 5 stars, as is, of course, a prerequisite of a 5-star review. Now, I'll be honest with you, Phil, very short review, but we will try and give it all of the gravitas that it deserves. More Richie, 5 stars. Enjoyable as ever, more Richie. That's it. That's
fantastic.
literally-
I mean,
that's
to
legit.
be fair, when Richie comes on, he does not take over. That's the wrong word. He's like the star of the show. We do like him. He's very good. He's very good quizmaster. And
I feel like you're showering him with too much praise, Phil. I worry that he would be listening to this and thinking that's a bit disingenuous, like you're trying to compensate for the fact that you don't really like him very much.
Okay, right, Richie, we don't like you, but we'll get you on from time
There
to
we go.
time. People like it. Brilliant. Like more
There we go.
Richie in small doses.
That's
How
it.
about that?
That's
How
it.
about that?
I think that's going to really break his heart now.
I
though.
know. See, but now he doesn't know which one was correct. It's like
That's it.
I
Maybe
told
it's somewhere in the
one
middle.
truth and one lie. Which one is it, Richie? You've got to decide.
I mean, maybe Richie has assumed the identity of Vegan Man 1961 because we would never assume that Richie would use a handle like Vegan Man.
Well, exactly. The meat lover that is Richie. Exactly. It does seem like a highly plausible review that was written by either Richie or Richie's mum.
Well, either way, or his dad, or his brother, or his sister, or his cousin, any potential variable, but
Anyone.
Someone who is indeed a fan of Richie. But Phil, why don't you expand and say thank you to Vegan Man 1961?
Vegan Man 1961, thank you for your short, concise review / request for more Richie. We will endeavour to try our best and have more Richie. I would love to say we could have more vegan, but that's not a thing that we will be doing. But thank you very much.
Indeed. We got another Succinct review recently as well. Not that we call out these reviews normally in a formal fashion, but it was a really entertaining one that we got over the week, Phil. Got a 1-star review. That was pretty good going.
Boo earns.
I know. It affected our perfect score on the Apple Podcast of Great Britain, though. Now we're actually been knocked down. We used to be a perfect 5. Now we're a 4.9.
What that means is we need more people to give us 5 stars, and hopefully
That's
eventually it will average back out to 5. I wouldn't be surprised though if it's just annoyingly on like 4.9 forever now.
I think that's probably the way it's going to go.
Which will frustrate me no end.
I think that's the thing. The only way is, potentially further down from here on in, though. That's the problem. That's what we're dealing with now, as we anger these individuals by calling out their 1-star reviews.
Well, I mean, we don't want to set a trend now, do we?
No. I was just surprised by it. It was funny. He didn't like the fact that we said that the LGT was warm.
No.
I mean, it was warm.
It's a legitimate complaint, surely.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a complaint we could necessarily leverage at the event organizers massively. I mean, it was a big venue. What can you do? But I don't necessarily feel like we hugely complained about it being warm. Maybe we did. I only need to go back and listen to it, I imagine, Phil.
Maybe we do. Yeah.
Absolutely. But before we get on with all of that, we're going to get on with this week's episode, I imagine, and talk about whatever it is we're going to talk about next, which I assume is going to be your experiences at No Retreat. And then later on, we'll talk about that new Black Templar stuff because, got to eke out a bit of extra Black Templar love, I imagine.
I know Games Workshop just likes to keep on rolling that Black Templar train. It will not stop, and it is coming in at destination. I guess our station.
Absolutely. Watch out! There's a Black Templar train coming through. Choo choo! That was my transitional noise. If it wasn't.
I thought that was the case. Yeah.
All right, and Phil, in this part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about your experiences on the island, the Rock, the Gibraltars. How was it, mate? Did you have a lovely time? I know everyone really looks forward to this time of the year where Phil talks about having gone to No Retreat again.
It's almost an annual tradition. Not every year, but a good 4 out of 5 years in a row, basically.
Had I been actually thinking about this in any amount of detail beyond, what I've kind of conjured up in the last 30 minutes before we started recording, what I should have done is gone back to our 2020 rendition of this content and thrown out a number of observations that I could have given back to you as a kind of talking point.
Like similar lists or...
Yeah, like in 2020, your thoughts and feelings on this was as following. How has that evolved as time has gone on? But unfortunately, that's the kind of professionalism and actual, dedication to content creation that you and I lack, mate. We're just going to basically replicate what we did every other time, which is you're going to reel off everyone you played against, what you thought about those games, and the event overall. So I guess we may as well start at the top. You got on a plane. How was that?
Yeah, going out was super easy.
Nice. Did you fly from Heathrow?
Heathrow, yes.
Lovely. Terminal 5.
Terminal 5, yeah. British
Oh,
Airways.
Fancy.
Never get the early flight because there's a 7 a.m. one, which I've done before. That's god awful because it means I need to basically wake up at like 1, get a 2 o'clock coach to the terminal. I've done it like twice or more. Not a fan. Get the 11 o'clock one, bit later, bit more subdued. Have to get up at like 6 a.m. That's doable. That's manageable.
Did you go to Gordon Ramsay's plane food?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
There's a thing at Heathrow. If you're not at Terminal 5, is it still there? It's by the escalators in the section. There's like, there's like a big clearing. There's a Wagamama's on one side, and on the other of the clearing is Gordon Ramsay's plane food.
I don't know. Well, I got there, discovered there was an hour before check-in for my luggage. And normally I don't do luggage. Normally you get, to get into technical details, you get 2 carry-on luggages. Like hand one to go under the seat, one to go up above. The one that you put up above is your carry case for your army, because that's the safest way for it to travel. So you do need to buy a specific airplane-sized travel case. Some people get magnetic cases. I've just got the it was like the Ard case from Games Workshop.
Yeah, the old classic. Yeah, they don't do those no more, do they?
Do they not? Well, it was a pretty good one.
Or do they?
I don't know if they do, but I do believe one of the sort of larger, like Crusade style cases is also still the right dimensions for sticking up there, although it is actually bigger. So you do that. Then you've got like your little backpack with all your stuff in that goes under the seat. Previous years, I would literally ram all my clothes in there and travel super light, so I don't need to check in anything, and therefore you don't have to bother about queuing or whatever for check-in. But this year I was like, no, I'm going to be fancy, going to treat myself, check luggage. But then I basically got an hour to wait around, so I treat myself to a Costa and grab a tea and a sausage sandwich. No vegans here, sorry.
That's it. You should have gone to Gordon Ramsay's plane food, mate. You could have had a lovely chicken curry. Oh, they're delightful.
Well, that's true. Well, I got through the other side.
The eggs Benedict there as well is, oh, my word.
No, I bet. I got through to the other side, met up with the other 3 people that were also going to No Retreats.
Who were those?
So we had Rob, who was an American.
Rob.
He was he basically travelled over from Boston.
Is that how they say Boston? Is it?
Apparently,
Boston.
yes, Boston. Yeah. So he basically travelled over and got a connecting flight. So we met him there. There was a guy called Reese. He was like a young student of a lad.
Where was he from?
I want to say Portsmouth.
Okay, so it's within the British Isles.
Yes,
you don't need to be that specific. Just,
from Wales, but I think studying in either Portsmouth or Southampton. Maybe it was Southampton.
Got to make sure you get that right, Phil. There's a great rivalry between the two. Don't confuse them.
Exactly. And then there's Joe Moscadini, who's a Londoner.
He gets a surname.
Yeah, well, because there's 2 Joes at No Retreat, so you don't want to get them confused.
So you got to tell the difference. Are both their surnames beginning with an M?
No, one's Joe Jones. The other one is Joe Moscardini. So
Jojo and Joe M.
yeah, exactly.
Or Jomus. Would Jomus
Could
work?
be. I mean, it could be. Yeah.
Do you think he'd answer to Jomus?
I don't know. I'll give it a try next time I see him.
Okay, you do that.
So yeah, they were all there already. So I treated myself to second breakfast. Had a little
Second breakfast.
light
You
breakfast.
hobbit, you.
I know. And then yeah, nice to meet up with them. Obviously, eventually get on the plane, go on the flight. That's all fine. Land. Got to do like a COVID test when we arrive as part of our entry to Gibraltar. That didn't take too long. That was relatively pain free for us. I think it was like 20 minutes queuing up. Apparently, the earlier flight there was like 3 planes all at once. They had to wait absolutely ages in a big old queue to do that. And then after that, we got picked up by Pardo, who's the event organizer or one of, but he's sort of like the main one, the head honcho.
The big kahuna.
Exactly, the big kahuna who's a little kahuna because he's.
Oh, how mean.
Yes, I'm being mean, but it's
because you're such a giant of a man. You mock us who are short.
Exactly. And then we get to the hotel, check in, eventually take our cases, like army stuff, down to the gaming hall, which is basically a mezzanine level above the entrance, unpack all our armies, and then you're sort of free to do whatever you want for the next few days. So the tournament starts on the Friday. There's one game Friday afternoon/evening. Then there's 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. I arrived on the Thursday, so you get a bit of chill time to arrive nice and early, do what you want. As I mentioned, had a practice game with Nick and his Death Guard, which was nice to actually play my army because I hadn't actually tested it out at all. And I think I said on the previous podcast, no real intentions of winning. It would be nice to win a couple of games, though. That was my sort of takeaway, as usual. But no illusions that it's necessarily a good list. But I hoped it would be a fun list to play.
Interesting. So what was the list, Phil? I mean, you've alluded to it. You don't need to go into painstaking detail, but obviously, share whatever you feel is necessary about the list. I saw you took the Avenger.
I did. Well, one of the reasons what I wanted to do with the army was take stuff I hadn't really played much with before, give it a bit of love, dust it off. So the Avenger Fighter, I always thought the new rules for it were actually pretty good. So it's got 2 las cannons, the Avenger Gatling cannon, which is 10 shots, strength 6, -2 damage. The perfect sort of stats for killing Marines, I thought.
Oh, yes.
You're only hit on 4s now because, there was that weird time when you were hitting on 3s and you didn't have the negative to hit. So it was like a weird perk of the Forge World rules. But now, it's back down to normal. So I took that. I also took my Rapier laser destroyers. In fact, I'll go through in the proper order of the list. So
that's all right. It sounds like you're working from the bottom up now, as it were.
Bottom up, yes. Well, I'm taking Death Korps of Krieg. Let's remind people of the regimental doctrine. So if you're a vehicle and you don't explode when you die, you can roll a dice, and on a 4+, you get to shoot again with 1 weapon, or you get to do 1 attack, which is a bit rubbish. If you are a vehicle like a tank commander or a Leman Russ that degrade, you shoot on your lowest profile, it's junk. Unless, of course, you have a weapon that doesn't degrade, in which case it's sometimes okay. If you're infantry, you get to ignore the modifiers for combat attrition. It's okay, but so many other armies have that built into their army in addition to their, chapter tactic or whatever. So it's not also the best. It's sometimes useful, but not really. So for HQs, I took a Death Korps Marshal. He had Old Grudges, which is select 1 unit at the beginning of the game. Everything within 6 inches gets to reroll all failed wound rolls. Sometimes useful, bit of a one-off thing. Took a Death Rider Squadron Commander because I was going to take Death Riders, so I wanted that as well. And then I took a Tank Commander, and I went with the Heavy Plasma Cannon on top and 2 Plasma Sponsons, and a Las Cannon on the front, and a Heavy Stubber on top. And I just did that one because I like the look of it. Not the most competitive because, was it Demolisher Cannons are all the rage. But I like the extra range, actually. I thought that might give me a bit more survivability. I also
What are those Leman Russes called normally? Are they the Exterminator?
Yes, I believe it is, actually, yeah.
Yeah, the Plasma Exterminators, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
So a command variant of the Leman Russ Exterminator thing.
Yeah, and I also gave it the tank ace Master Mechanic, which is -1 damage, so thought I'd try and make it a bit more resilient, which was actually quite useful, I thought, overall.
What's the thing where you regen a wound? Is that if you take them in a spearhead or something? Isn't there something where they get wounds?
If you take all tanks in a spearhead, it becomes objective secured, which is what I did last year. There is a if you take a custom regiment trait as part of a Psychic Awakening, one of them is you all regen a wound at the beginning.
Something riggers, isn't it? Or something?
There's also a stratagem called Jury Riggers, which you can play at the start of your turn, and you regain a wound. Weirdly, I only realised in my first game that you can't move when you do that. It's one of those things that I've never realised this whole time because it's a stratagem I so rarely use. But I was playing it in my first proper game, and Shaggy, my opponent, pointed out that I can't move. So I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. I won't move then."
Yes, I stand by my decision. But fine. So you've got that guy, and he's -1 damage, and he's loaded up with plasma and stuff. So it sounds pretty reasonable.
So I like the flat damage, against Space Marines and stuff. So I thought that'd be quite useful.
Yeah.
I've got 3 bog standard infantry squads for my troops.
Nice.
I've given them all Vox casters because I wanted the extra range for the orders. So obviously my Death Korps Marshal can do 2 orders as stat, and then my Death Rider Squadron Commander can do 1. And then there's always a stratagem if you want to play an extra one, if you need an extra order. For elites, I believe it's not in the Force Org chart, because I've got a Death Rider Commander, but I get Death Rider Command Squadron that normally is an elites, but then becomes outside of the Force Org chart because of him. So that was 1 Death Rider Squadron. I took an Astropath, which I gave Psychic Maelstrom, which is basically you cast it on a 7, on a 2+ you do a mortal wound, then on a 3+ you do a mortal wound, and you just keep carrying on until you either go up to beyond 6 or you don't roll it. Mostly I took him for secondaries, which I'll talk about at the end. I also, really annoying, forgot to pack my Astropath model, which I found super frustrating because I taken a photo beforehand. I'd forgotten then. I think I was just so busy with all the other bits and actually, painting bits of models to tidy them up that I just kind of somehow completely forgot about him. Luckily, Shaggy, who is one of the, I would say one of the SN people, but he's not. He was playing in the event, but he used to be an SN organizer. But I think life and stuff has gotten in the way, so he doesn't really do that anymore. He is a guard player as well and had a spare Psyker model for me to borrow, so that was very kind of him. Otherwise, because originally I was just going to use a spare crewman because the crew of the artillery don't actually do anything, so I was going to use one of them, but it was nice to have a proper model to represent him. Next up for my elites, I had a 10-man squad of engineers. I had a 5-man squad of engineers. They're all armed with shotguns. Was it 12-inch range, 3 shots apiece, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. They're pretty useful. They can also deep strike natively. I took an officer of the fleet. Oh God, I've just seen that I've completely not mucked up, but I gave him Krov's Aquila, which I completely forgot that I gave him because I start the game with 6 CP, which isn't many.
Yes.
And the reason why I start the game, and the list is valid, so I did do this wrong. The reason why I start the game with so few is I took a bunch of extra relics to unlock. And then I was like, for 1 extra CP, or maybe it's like 2 extra CP, I can get a 3rd and final relic in my army. And I obviously was like, I'll take Krov's Aquila because then I'm going to regain CP during the games. And actually, I did find myself struggling with the lack of CP and wishing I took Krov's Aquila. And it was obviously a last-minute addition that I took. And don't have. Admittedly, so the actually no, this is wrong. I didn't take Kov's Aquila. It says it on Battle Scribe because there's an error. So I actually take the dagger of Tushunka instead. But Battle Scribe is a bit broken and doesn't let you take it on him, even though you can actually take it. So that's what I did. So
I mean, it's all sounding very convoluted.
Basically, in Battle Scribe, I added in the relic just to make sure it would validate. But I knew I wasn't taking that specific relic, and I was taking the dagger instead. Okay.
Sounds to me like there's some shifty, shady shenanigans.
So
going on
the reason why I take the relic is the dagger relic allows him plus one other model or one other unit to outflank from any table edge.
Yeah.
The officer gets one ability, which is once per game he can do mortal wounds via a strafing run ability, which I sometimes forgot about. Sometimes it was useful. He also can pick a unit at the start of a shooting phase, and my plane can get reroll ones to hit against that one unit. That's an 18-inch range from the officer of the fleet. Not very useful, but I thought I'd take it for that anyway. But also he can outflank one unit, which I would then outflank with the astropath. So I could always do Pierce the Veil to basically appear in my opponent's deployment zone and do Pierce the Veil, because you've got to be within 6 inches of your opponent's player edge, basically.
Yep.
If the psychic power goes off on a 4, if you do it twice, you get 8 points, so which seemed pretty easy. If you do it 4 times, you'd get the full 15.
Wow. Okay.
I've got to give a shout out to a guy called Tim Whitney who told me about this little stratagem, and I actually thought it overall worked pretty well as another way of doing secondaries. So my whole plan for secondaries was to take non-killing secondaries whatsoever every game, and just to build my army around doing other stuff.
Strong.
Yeah. So I also took some veterans with triple plasma guns in there, so 10-man squad, and I could bring them on the board via some dedicated transports. But I'll get to that when I get to the dedicated transports. For fast attack, I took a 5-man squad of Death Riders. For my heavy support, I took 2 separate units of heavy quad launcher batteries, which are like the Thud guns, 4d6 shots. What was it? Strength 6, I want to say. No AP, which is so annoying, and 1 damage. So lots of shots. It's got blast, which could be quite useful. I was more tempted by the heavy mortars, because they do have -1 and they do 2 damage, which is a bit, again, better against Marines. But it's only D6 shots. And when you're hitting on 4s, you may be killing 1 thing at most. But here's the thing with the Thud guns, you're mostly killing 1 model at most anyway, and you're rolling sometimes like 40 dice if you're shooting both of them at the same time. But I found they were quite useful just to sit on objectives in my backfield, and often I was using them to kill the stuff that's screening out my opponent's deployment zone, so I could then, turn 2 or maybe as late as turn 3, drop in my officer and astropath and some of my other units. Then I took the Rapier Laser Destroyer battery. I took 3 of them because I've had those models for years. Loved them in 6th and 7th edition. Pretty rubbish in 8th edition. Now, actually, I have to say they're pretty good. Comes in at 255 points. They do 3 shots each, hitting on 4s, strength 10, -4 AP, D3 plus 3 damage a piece. They can, if you roll decent enough to actually hit something, murder anything, basically. And I've got some fun stories about it, which I'll get to in the actual game chat. Then the Avenger Strike Fighter, which I've already talked about, so I won't go over that again. Dedicated transports. Took 2 Hades breaching drills. They can deep strike anywhere. They're pretty good in close combat if you can get the charge off.
Very good.
Often that never happens, basically, which I find infuriating. They've got 4+ invuln.
You need the right target as well, though, right? Like when you say they're good in close combat, they're good at killing.
Well, they're really good against vehicles. So they're D3 plus 3 attacks, strength 12, minus, I think it's -4 AP, and then
Yeah,
it's
-4, I
flat 3
think.
damage. But if you're a vehicle, it's flat 6 damage, so it can murder vehicles.
Oh, it's murders
if you're
vehicles
lucky.
so well. Imperial Knights hate those things. 'Cause they
No, I
will
know.
just smash
Yes.
Imperial Knights to death.
As Garfield is all too aware about. You can also use them to deep strike the engineers, which is puzzling because engineers can deep strike anyway. But you can also take with them a veteran squad. So I had my veterans with plasma, and I could basically, they can accompany the Hades breaching drill. So they've just got to appear within 3 inches of each other. And it's a great way of getting your plasma into rapid fire range straight away, which I thought was quite a cool combo. Most games I deep struck both of them, or sometimes I just did one, so I had one on the board, because actually with the crush them stratagem you can move and advance and you hit on 2s in combat. The hitting on 2s is super essential because they normally only hit on 4s. Gone are the days of Krieg having weapon skill 3+, so actually you're not hitting too much on the limited number of attacks you get, so using crush them stratagem is really helpful. However, from deep strike, that's really useless because you've got to declare the stratagem at the start of your charge phase. So you don't know if you're going to get your charge off, basically. And when you've got limited CP, you want to save a reroll to try and get in. But even then, it's barely a 50% chance of getting in. Then I took a patrol detachment. This is where some of my CP went. I took, for another HQ slot, I took Tempesta Prime. Basically, I have all my grenadiers representing scions. So I took Tempesta Prime. I gave him the Tactical Auto Reliquary of Tiberius, which is a relic that allows him to do 2 orders instead of 1. Why did I not take the Command Rod, which does the exact same thing and only costs 5 points? Well, I just didn't have the model of the Command Rod, and I wasn't going to start cutting up one of my models, so I was like, well, I'll just pay the points for the relic, or pay the CP for the relic. In terms of how it worked, and I checked with the event organizers, I'm not taking the scion detachment, and it's all scions in here, as a specific dragoons or lambda lions or anything, because there's a specific stipulation of the event that you can only take 1 sub faction. So if you take 1 regiment, it's all Death Korps of Krieg. So while I can access the Codex Scion orders and relic, I can't actually use the Scion ability of, if you're within half range, 6s gives you an extra shot. And I couldn't take anything really cool like running them as dragoons, which would, I believe, allows you to effectively rapid fire from deep strike, which would have been so cool and would have instantly made my list way more potent. So if you're being competitive, that's what you would do, but because of the stipulations of the event, I couldn't do that. I did take 2 squads of for my troops of Tempesta Scions. One was all hotshot lasguns with the Voxcaster. The other one was 4 melter guns, and then the rest hotshot lasguns plus a Voxcaster. So it gave me a bit of flexibility in terms of where one squad would accompany the Tempesta Prime, and then I have like an 18-inch order range if I wanted it. But that was my list basically. Most of my army can deep strike. Most games, what I would do is I'd always deep strike the engineers. I would always deep strike all the scions. I would mostly deep strike 1 Hades drill with the veteran squad, and then optionally, depending on the opponent and the terrain, I would sometimes deep strike the extra Hades drill, which was all just about under half my army. So I would say my deployment was relatively quick, but not in all my games. But yeah, turn 2 or turn 3 is when I'd pretty much dump everything down. I basically built the army to either take engage on all fronts alongside retrieve Octarius data, which again, both of those are table quarters. And then I would always take Pierce the Veil, which is the one in the deployment zone. In a couple of missions, I was a bit more cheeky, and I took behind enemy lines, and I took deployed teleport homers, which again has to be done in your opponent's deployment zone, and I took Pierce the Veil. So my 2 characters of the Astropath and the Officer of the Fleet that are effectively outflanking in my opponent's deployment zone are scoring all my secondaries. it's super risky and didn't always pay off, unfortunately. But it was actually quite good in some of the games to do that as a combo. And I like the fact that I knew what I was doing. I didn't have to worry every game about what I was picking, regardless of who my opponent was, pretty much. And most of the time, if I'm doing Dawn of War style, I'd be more inclined to sort of put all my eggs in one basket if I thought they couldn't screen me out. Whereas if you're doing sort of long ways, there's less of a deployment zone, so it's a bit harder to actually pull those off.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, mate. I mean, obviously it's good to approach this stuff with a strategy, and it sounds obviously like you did that. Shame that you were a bit all over the place on what exactly you took, although it seems like you kind of got to the bottom of that as you talked us through it. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting list, an interesting strategy, and I think, you know, ultimately it differs from probably how I would have looked to build things out based on what I know of your collection. But as you said, you've kind of done the way you've done it for a long old time now, and you needed that, you know, change of pace. So I think that was important to try out some new things. It's cool that you chuck the Avenger in, because I think that's a really gorgeous mini, and I'm glad that got a moment to shine again, as it were. You know, and I think you know, the mixture of you know, mainly heavy infantry and riders and artillery pieces was interesting, because typically of late you've gone very tank heavy, I suppose, which is understandable.
So the last event I did pretty much all tanks, and obviously troops to go inside the tanks. I kind of wanted to theme it more as a kind of armored company. This time I wanted to do the complete opposite. In hindsight, probably the most optimum list is actually to take a bit more tanks, because, you know, tank commanders are good. Transports probably give me a bit more board presence, which I think, you know, turn 1 and turn 2 is what I was severely lacking. However, the fact that half my stuff's deep striking means I can pretty much, and they're very terrain dense boards, meant I could hide a lot of my stuff turn 1 and not have to worry too much about coming out or getting shot at, unless it's, you know, I'm going first or whatever. So stuff like that was interesting. Yeah, there definitely is optimizations, which we'd talk about at the very end in terms of how I would improve the list.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, mate. I think you're absolutely right, though. I think a mixture of the two is definitely the way to play it, and I think the addition of transports is pretty handy. I personally quite like, bizarrely at the moment, the Taurox as a transport for the guard as a unit choice, because it fits really nicely into the current stipulations around Bring It Down, because they're only worth 1 victory point, which is really important, because the Chimera, if I remember correctly, is 11 wounds, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I believe the Taurox is 10.
Probably. I
think it is literally 10. So I think it's one of those vehicles that I feel like actually has quite a lot of play, especially if you're going to be running the Scions, because obviously there's a lot of things you can do to, you know, to utilize the Scions inside the Tauroxes, although those are Taurox primes, not regular Taurox.
I just hate those models so much. If I was to take anything, I would do flyers, or if I could take ideally the Centaur models and still be able to use them or proxy them. They're not, I mean, they're a bit too small really for a Taurox, but ideally that's the sort of thing you'd want to take.
I've just looked it up. Yeah, God, the transport capacity of a Taurox is actually 10 models. I thought it was capped at like 6. It's pretty strong.
Yeah, and as you say, 10 wounds, yeah.
Yeah, 90 points though, actually. I thought it was going to be a bit cheaper than that when I was saying about how I quite like it.
Yeah.
What are you getting for that? You're getting 10 wounds, movement 14. Boy, that's a speedy one.
That is fast, yeah.
That is a whippy fella. That'd be great for Engage. Just get that out in all corners at the start.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you turn yourself sideways, you could probably get yourself wholly within a table edge if you start on the deployment zone, assuming there's
just advance it.
Oh well, that's true. Yeah,
Just advance it. But yeah, apparently it comes with 2 auto cannons, which is no bad thing. So that's 4 shots at strength 7, -1/2 damage. Yeah, I like it. Transport capacity 10. I appreciate the model's terrible. Maybe look at alternate sculpts from other companies, maybe. For
Maybe. I mean, the other one that I do keep meaning to do is the Arvis Lighter. I've got one. I think they're stunning model, but they're sort of so useless now because in
You just said some words I don't understand. And what now?
an
Wu-Hei?
Arvis Lighter, it's a very small, like little brick of a flyer from Forge World.
Oh, yeah,
Stunning,
yeah,
cool
yeah.
model. Most people would probably buy it and just use it as terrain. In the 8th edition, it used to have a ton of different weapon options. There are no weapons modeled on it. So in the new version, it's literally just a transport capacity of 10, I believe. It's like 80 points for a flyer that has no weapons. It's probably not worth it, but I can't, and you can't do grab shoot insertion or anything sensible like that because it's not Valkyrie or Vendetta, but it's a lovely model. So I want to find some play in it some way, whether it's for my Scions / Grenadiers or if it's for my Inquisition force. I want to build it out at some point, basically.
75 quid as well.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
I mean, admittedly, you already bought yours, right? So, I mean, that much is at least gone. It's only 85 points, apparently, the Arvis.
Yeah.
And
it can move. It's quite speedy. Yeah.
Oh, it's got a transport capacity of 12.
12. There we go. Get some Ogrins in there.
This model cannot transport.
No. Can it transport a Cyclops, though, is the question.
No, well, it can. So it can transport 12 Astra Militarum infantry models. Each heavy weapon team or veteran heavy weapon team takes up the spaces of 2. That's what it specifies. So it doesn't say anything about the Cyclops. But yeah, it's got literally no guns.
Well, here's the thing. So the Cyclops ammunition vehicle has a compact rule. This model embarked within it and disembarks from Astra Militarum and Varkle models as if it were infantry models. It takes for a space of 6. This model cannot shoot internally in which it disembarks, which kind of makes it a bit rubbish.
So you could put 2 Cyclopses.
Yeah, that could be fun.
That could be
that's
fun.
That's nice, just like a little threat unit.
Here is a question, right? How does the Cyclops blow up? When it dies?
No. When it dies, it just explodes and does mortal wounds, but on a 5+ instead of a 6+. So it shoots in the shooting phase, and you now have to roll to hit. Gotcha. It used to be that it would automatically hit everything within 6-inch range. I believe basically when you do shoot, it does target everything visible within range, friendly and enemy, it says, and you can still do it even if you're within engagement range. I believe that's what it says. I'm still not too sure about it. They're 50 points. Their ballistic skill 4+. Range only 6 inches. Heavy 2d6 shots. Strength 9 -2 d3 damage with blast. So if you position yourself correctly, it could be really good. It's got a 10-inch move though, so you could potentially move up and do it. Obviously,
well, it would have a 13-inch move disembarking from a.
True, but you can't shoot the turn you disembark.
According to
the rules of the actual the compact rule says you can't shoot in the turn in which you disembark. So that's an annoying downside to it, which is sort of fair enough. But yeah, that would have been fun.
Still, though, it's quite funny the idea that you could, fly this guy up into some enemy areas and then drop off 2 explosives that could then themselves explode, which is quite funny. Like you can have like a explosion daisy chain going off as it all happens.
Yeah, that's true.
Could be quite fun. I'll tell you what, though, for 85 points, that's a pretty hilarious little option because, like, you could just have a few of them darting around do airborne units work for engaged on all fronts?
They do, yeah. They don't work for behind enemy lines, but they work for engaged on all fronts. So I often use the Avenger as one of my turn 1 points. So effectively, turn 1, that flyer gives you 2 points without even trying, because obviously trying to get the 4th quarter is sometimes a bit more difficult. But quite often I would use my horses do the orders to double move them. So it is doable.
No, I like the idea of the old Arvis lighter. I think that's quite a funny old idea. The idea of just loading a bunch of infantry into it and just, hurling it around the board would be quite hilarious. Maybe even look at heavy weapons teams, because I mean there could be some really interesting stuff you could do with model placement with heavy weapons teams in certain quadrants and stuff, like drop off. Because that's the thing, you could get full heavy weapon teams into there, so you could get 6 heavy weapon teams, so 2 squads of 3 or 3 squads of 2.
I could see some use of it with troops as well. So obviously I'm like deep striking everything, but you do find if you don't have the board presence, you get screened out quite easily. So sometimes in games I'm dropping my scions down kind of near like my side of the board, because the opponents just advanced so much by the time I actually want to drop them down, or they've screened me out really well. So actually if you're doing it via flyers, it's like that's a threat, because like you've got to shoot at that for a turn, or a -1 to hit as well, or I'm chucking out a bunch of models that's going to be on an objective, or it's going to be doing something, shooting at your guys, doing scramblers or whatever it might be. So they're quite annoying threat units, and ultimately at the end of the day you're just shooting at a really crap transport with no guns. It's like a waste of time. And yeah, even if you blow it out, cool, those guys are getting out, and yeah, 1 or 2 might die, but that'll probably be it unless you roll really badly. So that could actually be quite a good fun unit, and it gives you the better board positioning rather than deep striking where you've got to be 9 inches away from your enemy opponent.
Can you put Crusaders in transports like this?
You should be able to.
10 Crusaders.
Well, yeah, I was tempted to take my Crusaders. I think Pardo really wanted me to take like an all Krieg force, because I was tempted to take some Inquisition. He was like, "Oh no, just take all your Krieg, like keep it properly one faction," which is sort of the overall theme of the tournament. Even though you do have some stipulations where you can take assassins or an Inquisition if you're an Imperium. And I was thinking, and it's weirdly only recently has the competitive guard units cottoned onto it, and I've been thinking about it for a while. The Crusaders have the old Crusader rule where they can like move at the start of their turn, like they use the old mechanic of faith from before the the new sisters came out. Because I remember
before the old sisters, mate. These are before
the beta codex of sisters came out. Because you basically had the beta codex, which was in chapter approved, that specifically said for your Crusaders within Astra Militarum, use these rules, because they're a unit that's shared by both factions. But now they've got their own codex. There's no wording like that. So basically, Guard Crusaders default to the old Guard Codex rules, which actually has for them a slightly better version where I think it's like, I can't remember if you roll dice or something, but it's like you can get models back quite easily, or you can do a move, or you can attack as part of the movement phase instead of moving, or you get a lot of extra flexible options. So they're actually a pretty viable choice now, I think, and I've got 5 of them, so I should use them again at some point. So I was tempted to take them, but I decided not to, more for thematic reasons.
Well, fair enough. I feel like we've explored the fullness of what you've taken and what you could have taken, and then also gone off on a tangent about things that might be good under other contexts. Exactly. But you had games to play, so it's Friday. You've done your test game. You're feeling fancy free. You're sitting on cloud 9 as you rock about on this boat thing that they've got you on. How was that boat thing, by the way? Even though they're docked, I tend to find if you're on one of those boats, even when they're docked somewhere, they're still a bit wobbly.
This is it's solid as a rock, so to speak. Part of me is like, is it just like concreted to the ground and it's a fake ship? It probably isn't, but it doesn't move at all. You don't notice it.
Because I've been on the one they've got docked outside of the Excel Centre in London. I've gone on that once during like a Comic-Con or whatever, and that thing, even though it is obviously docked on the the River Thames. It still moves about a little bit, but not the case for the one in Gibraltar.
No, it isn't. It is like a perfectly solid structure.
Well, there you go. Well done them. There you go. In using their old noodle. All right, fine. Well, anyway, so you're on this perfectly solid structure that looks and appears as if it was once a boat, and you're getting into game one. So how's about you tell us about the first of your official games?
So game one, up against Shaggy, a no retreat, as I said, no retreat.
Shaggy, the 90s R&B star.
Yes, that is exactly him.
Okay.
The suit.
You should have said no. It wasn't me. Wouldn't that have been a thing?
Yeah, I guess.
Although it wouldn't have worked in that context.
No, it wasn't him.
Wasn't he? There you go. That'll do.
I'd played him at last no retreat, and got pretty smashed by his Ultramarine army that he's got. Then he had Gilliman. This time he took a slightly different list. He basically had taken his LGT list, like his proper tournament list, and I was like, ooh. And I don't know if I said it already. It was quite a competitive scene this year. It's not meant to be, really. It's always seen as it's meant to be a hobby retreat where you just hang out and play games. But there is a tournament attached to it, so people do like to take tough lists. Normally it's always a small amount, but I felt this year it was a lot more than previous years. But they're all really stunning armies, so you can't really begrudge people. On a slight tangent, there's a guy called David from France. He's got a stunning, literally stunning Raptors army. Beautiful. But it is like the quintessential Space Marine net list. Now, not to say it is a net list, but it ticks every single box that you think a Space Marine army will have. It's got a Plasma Redemptor. Yes. Has it got Vanguard Veterans? Yes. Has it got Eradicators? Yes. You see where I'm going? It had all the things that are super good about Space Marine.
Those aren't massively competitive options, though, in the grand scheme of things at the moment. The competitive options is more the Dreadnoughts, the drop pods with Devi squads, that kind of stuff.
I want to say he had a drop pod with Devastate Squad, but if he did, it was only one. But I can't remember if he actually did or not. But he had kind of the quintessential, these are good Space Marine units.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to take good Space Marine units.
Well, exactly. But
it can't all just be, I don't know, what's a bad Space Marine unit right now? The Hunter?
Servitors. I don't know.
The Stalker? The Storm Raven. The Storm Raven's pretty rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, and you probably hit the nail on the head, there's almost no really bad options. Blade Guard, yeah, they're good. If you're taking a lot of them, you're like, oh, yeah, pretty tasty.
Pretty reasonable.
So anyway, enough of David. Stunning army, lovely chap. He came third. I think, if I recall correctly, he did pretty well for himself. However, Shaggy, he took Ultramarines, he took Calgar, he took his Honor Guard, he had Apothecary, he had Tigerius, a Lieutenant, and Richard would be happy with a Storm Shield. An Ancient, he had a Venerable Dreadnought with Las Cannon and Fist. He had a Contemptor Relic Dreadnought with twin Las Cannons. He had some suppressors. He had a 5-man aggressor squad with a bolt rifle, bolt gauntlets. A squad of Phobos units, like the 5-man ones.
Yeah.
Which basically basically started the game on the objective in the middle of the board, turn one, which was a pain for me to deal with. I want to say Eliminators. They're the sniper ones, right?
Those are correct, yes.
Yes, had a squad of sniper ones, and then I think 2 tactical, 5-man tactical squads as well. And I mentioned the Eradicators.
You said about how he had Eradicators.
Yeah, 5-man Eradicator squad as well. His whole tactic was
that is also suboptimal, by the way, having 5-man Eradicators. I mean, when you say this is a competitive tryhard list, it doesn't sound like one.
It was his tournament list. As far as I'm aware, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't like the Macroplasma Redemptors that pretty much every other Space Marine army had at the event, which is considered to be the best. I mean, his Relic Contemptor I faced last year, and it was just deadly because it was like 2-up, re-rolling, crazy invuln save. It was just deadly. This year, I managed to kill it. So actually, it was a good list. He knows what he's doing with it as well. He's a really competent player.
Well, that's always the worst, isn't it?
Well, I know someone who's good, and I was expecting out of the bat to lose this game pretty much hands down because I lost him last year. I thought, well, I'll probably lose this year as well. In terms of his secondaries, obviously he took like honor, honor the chapter.
Honor the chapter.
Overs of Moment. That's it.
The Oaths.
Yes. Bring it down, retrieve Octarius data, which he was using as suppressors to deep strike down and do stuff, and then Overs of Moment. Obviously, I had enough vehicles, but they were mostly 1-pointers. I think the tank, Lemur's Tank Commander, the Avenger, the only 2-pointers out of all the other stuff that I've got. I took Engage on all fronts to retrieve Octarius data and pierce the veil, so my kind of play it safe version. Pretty much everything on his was like castled up in the middle of the Dawn of War style deployment. The game was surround and destroy. He had one Phobos unit in the middle of the board on one of the objectives and sort of in ruins, so getting lots of annoying saves. And then in either corner, effectively screening me out, he had a tactical squad on one side and an eliminator squad in the other. I got to go first, though. Basically boosted up the Avenger, so it was like touching the cover, or not touching the sort of just next to the cover, so I was not getting my -1 to shoot at the eliminators. I think I used it to sort of try and kill them plus another unit. Didn't really work out. I think I just was a bit rubbish with my rolls. It was and his whole tactic was literally move forwards into the center with everything. So he's like scoring Overs of Moment pretty much consistently every turn. He was killing a lot of my units, so he was getting Bring It Down most turns. Retrieve Octarius data was one thing that he kind of wasn't doing as much on, so he didn't score as highly on that. Whereas I was doing Engage on all fronts pretty much every turn. First 2 turns it was like 2 points. Second 2 turns it was 3, and then it was 2. This game I think was the only one that I went all 5 rounds because we managed doing it pretty quick. I think partly because his army is such a small, like low model count, we could get through it quite easily. My rapiers were like the stars of the show in this game. Managed to kill a Contemptor. They managed to. I think I actually used them to kill the eliminators as well because they've got crazy saves and cover, and also annoyingly, the 2 cover points that he had on the ends of the table in his deployment zone were both dense. So it's like I'm -1 to shoot at them. So it's like great, and they're effectively on objectives as well. And I didn't have that on my end. So it made it a bit more difficult. So he got to choose the table side and he picked that side because obvious advantage him. But yeah, my rapiers just managed to wipe out that eliminator squad, which meant I could basically deep strike a bunch of units down onto that side. So as he came up to take the center objective, he managed to hold the other objective to the right of that objective. And then I managed to sort of swing my army around. My whole tactic every game was to just pivot my army, and this is a sort of tactic we talked about before games in general. But that was sort of my tactic. Let them have the middle objective or one of my deployment zone-ish objectives, and I would always basically deep strike everything down into one side of their objectives, so I could do Pierce the Veil, screen out those characters with grenadiers or engineers, and then I could also grab an objective that's ideally in their deployment zone. Anyway.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about that strategy is I think Engage on all fronts was a terrible choice for you. I sort of said as much to you before the game began, but I don't think you got a chance to read those comments before going into it. But I would have definitely just gone with behind enemy lines in those matchups.
Yeah, I thought in that one you said go assassinate, or you or Richard said it.
I said assassinate behind enemy lines, and I can't remember what the third one was I said, but it definitely said behind enemy lines.
Yeah, assassinate would have been a terrible one. I didn't kill a single character all game because he's got the honor guard, which just keeps them all protected, and they're basically all in a big blob again with the eradicators, and it's like you try and shoot at the the eradicators and the aggressors. So it's like you shoot at them. Most of my stuff is like 1 damage, so he's like, cool, I've got this stratagem to give me +1 to my save. Oh, you're also shooting at them. I'm gonna do oh god, what is it? The super hero one where they can't be wounded on anything but 4+, transhuman. So it's those old classics that come out every game against that key unit that you want to kill, which made them some of those units super durable. But I managed to plink off his other units on the outside and sort of outmaneuver him because he wanted all of his stuff in the middle. I think engage on all fronts worked well for me. I scored 12 for that. Retrieve Octarius Data, I scored 12. Pierce of the Veil, I scored 8, which was pretty much my target because, and this is something that I'll talk about now. It's like when it comes to picking secondaries, most of them are progressive, right? You need to actually pick secondaries that you probably know, unless you've got a very quick army, you aren't going to get to turn 5 on. Pierce the Veil, for me, I can't start scoring it till turn 2 because I've got to deep strike them in their deployment zone. You've got to do it twice to get 8 points and 4 times to get the whole 15. So that means I need to do it every single turn without failing my dice rolls, without them being able to deny it, which in this case, I think he was out of range most of beyond turn 2, I think. So I managed to score it. Because I didn't get it round 2, and I think that was either because I didn't deep strike him. I couldn't deep strike him down then, I suspect. And then after that, he was out of range. But you need to potentially pick secondaries where you might not get to turn 4, let alone turn 5. What will you score if you only get up to turn 3? If you can get to turn 4, can you get max points? I think that's something that no one really talks about when it comes to tournament play. Most of my games went to, I would say, turn 4. I think one game maybe only went to turn 3 because we both had like big armies and it just took forever to do stuff. Ideally it'd be great to get to turn 5 in every single game. But in this sort of event, you're not also talking things out. It's like, no, you play what you can do. They come round every table at a certain time, basically like, no more turns, like finish off both player turns for the round, but like no more after that. So you need to be really like, go, okay, right, we need to quickly finish this one off so we can start the next one to make sure we finish in time.
No, I hear that. I think the point I would make though in terms of your strategies is like, I think against this army, I think you just struggle with even though obviously it did okay for you. The problem with engage on all fronts is that it splits your focus. I think you just wedged everything in a corner and just picked a flank because with Marine players, certainly the kind of Marine players, this kind of Marine player with this kind of army, they're going to spread their force out across the line and they're going to have a little bit over here and a little bit in the middle and a little bit in the right. So for you, the only way I would have probably prioritized it is just wedge it in one corner and just run up and just basically just be a nuisance. But at the end of the day, mate,
I always try and, so pretty much most games I always deploy sort of fairly even to start off with. So it's like, a squad, I've 3 squads of infantry, 1 in the middle, 1 to the left flank, 1 to the right flank, usually like on an objective or going to go towards an objective on those sides. The artillery pieces sort of in the middle, maybe both near each other on an objective, or they're to, the far left, far right to screen out my opponents from deep striking if they've got any, but also far forward enough that I can make sure I can hit their deployment zones to basically try and clear out any units that are either on objectives or in a corner that I want to get to for when I deep strike my units in. And then I've got, usually sometimes I split my Death Riders on different, like on both flanks. Sometimes I lump them all together in one. And then I had a couple of units to like shore up the middle ground. Like the tank commander would usually be there, the flyer would just be wherever it wanted to be.
Yeah, of course.
But ultimately in that game, I went hard on the left flank.
Okay.
With when I deep strike everything, 90% of the stuff went there. An engineer squad and a grenadier squad went to the right flank to try and clear him off that objective, because if I did that, I would start scoring more, control more on the primary. But basically, he's on a ruin that's on a dense piece of terrain. So it was like, yeah, -1 to hit. Annoyingly, so I deep struck one of the grenadier squads down, and it was within 12 of his aggressor squad. So he's like, cool, Auspex scan. And I was like, damn it. So he literally like obliterated the grenadier squad off the face of the planet straight away. I still had some engineers in there, which managed, I think, survive long enough to do retrieve Octarius data before they also died. But everything else was on the other side. So he had his Contemptor on the left, which I managed to take out with the rapiers, I want to say. But then he had a couple of other squads there, which, like the Eradicators, I think I managed to deal with them in a combination of like one of the Hades drills. The veteran squad managed to deep strike into some ruins so they could get some good line of sights to shoot stuff off. So I managed to clear him off of that objective and steal it from him. And then behind the ruin was where I could hide my astropath and officer of the fleet, so he couldn't use any of his units to see them, basically, from where they were positioned. So they were kind of neatly hidden out the way, and then he basically would have to shoot through my screens and then kind of go out of his way to try and get those people. So they were kind of nicely scoring points for me. It was a really fun game. It was super close. I sort of wasn't expecting to win, but basically I got 82 points, which was pretty high scoring for me, and he got 87. And that went all the way to turn 5 as well. And then, in fact, the last turn we sort of slowed it down a bit because we were like, okay, take your time to work out what you can score, make sure you can achieve it, and what your opponent can score. And I think where I always seem to get undone in these situations is quite in a couple of games I've gone first, so because my opponent's going second, they can do theirs last, so they can charge you, shoot you off of an objective, and then all of a sudden they're getting control more or something, which in a couple of games undid me, especially when they're so close. But I was really happy with that because I thought, he's a great player, it was a great match, but also it was like a really tough list, so that gave me bit of potentially unfair confidence going into the next game. I was like, I could probably do this. I sort of know what I'm doing now. So yeah,
I think the thing is with that though as well, it's like, I think to your point, it's always good to get like some fun close games going and to kind of feel out the process for how to play 9th edition. And I think for you, because you've had such limited experience playing 9th edition games comparable to some, like, I think it is still difficult for you to completely comprehend the way those secondaries work and to be kind of cognizant of them throughout. Because I'll be honest with you, mate, it's only really started clicking into place for me with the grand tournament like pack and so on now, after attending the LGT and having done a few tournaments this year. So I've played in 5 different tournaments now this year, and I think it was only really after the 3rd or 4th one of these that I actually started feeling like I was becoming more comfortable with the secondaries. They're mental gymnastics when you're not completely and utterly comfortable with them.
Yeah,
so
I was quite comfortable playing those objectives, especially engage on all fronts and retrieve Octarius data. I've done in pretty much every 9th edition game I've played, like going back even to the last no retreat that I did. So those ones I sort of know what I'm doing with. I think I'm very focused on doing my secondaries. I'm probably not very good at denying my opponent their secondaries. I'm sort of too focused on trying to hold the, try and keep on objectives to stay in the game on the primary. And I think my aim with the primary is to like just draw. And if I can get ahead in that, do it. But quite often it's quite difficult, I find, especially when most of my army's not on the board turn 1, turn 2. So it's difficult to actually hold the ground, so to speak, on those objectives. And then it's only later on, again, my army's coming down turn 2, turn 3. I actually need turn 4 and turn 5 to do my damage and swing the game. So in some games when it ends early, I'm not really making the most of the play style that my army is, which is something to sort of factor in future. Like, do I just need to learn to speed up, or to, coach my opponent to speed up if I think they're taking a bit longer, or do I just need an army that just plays quicker? So I'm, so we get through a quick game regardless of, not to say there's any slow playing going, because there's not. It's just, I think the rounds are like 2.5 hours. It's like just not enough time for a 2,000 point game. Like,
no, I agree.
You need like 3 hours to do it, really. And it's so easy just to sort of enjoy and have a bit of chit chat. And then it's like, oh God, where's the time gone? And I do think deployment, even though most of my stuff's off, like when you are deploying, everyone takes it seriously because you're alternating models. It just takes a long period of time. The old, you deploy everything, then I deploy everything, always felt so much quicker.
I think I think that's true. And I think the thing with all of that is that, you do need to get good at pushing the tempo. But I think it's really strange that at No Retreat, based on the way that they structured the 5 games, the 1 game on Friday, the games on Saturday, the games on Sunday, I'm surprised they didn't give you guys more time. Like, it shocks me that they're sticking to that 2.5 hour window. I would have thought they would have given you 4 hours or something, just given the nature of the event,
Yeah, in fact, I would say my one bit of feedback is actually that they give you lots of time. So in your lunch breaks, you can go off and do something. So there's a dolphin tour on the Saturday that you can do. There's like another walk that you can do. I think maybe that one's on the Friday of like defenses, like it's part of the Gibraltar Rock, like the kind of Napoleonic and World War I defenses. So you can go around do it. So they want you to have a chilled out time. You have long lunches, go off and do stuff if you want to. Personally, I'd rather they reduce that down and actually we get a longer time to play, so you're not rushing through the games and the turns, and you just sort of focus on that, because ultimately that's what you're there for. That would be my one chief change. I think Pardo mentioned at the very end that they're thinking about taking it down from 2,000 points to 1,750. So ultimately that would speed up the game and probably solve that problem as well, just because there's less stuff on the table.
I do actually, I think any of those solutions would be valuable. I think, either increase the time or decrease the points. I do feel like 1,750 is a better points value for, 40k 9th edition. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Exactly. So game 1, you've lost, very close loss. You said 82 to 87, was it? Or
it was 82 to 87. Yeah.
I mean, not a bad first outing. So you're in with the losers and you're heading into game 2.
Yeah. So game 2,
who with you is a loser?
Well, he was actually a winner.
Okay.
Which was interesting, and I think it's because I probably scored the highest or one of the highest out of all the losers. So I think I got paired up with one of the winners who scored like the least highest. So in terms of the ranking, I got the odd pair, effectively, which was that I would happily take that if I could get that crown, best of the worst. I was up against Jesus, who's Spanish. It's sort of spelt Jesus, but not pronounced that way. Stunning Blood Angels force. It's all like non-metallic metal style of painting. Loads of cool conversion bits like Forge World pieces and things like that. He had, I've got his list. He's got had Chaplain, had Chief Librarian Mephiston, Sanguinary Priest. He had interestingly, he had an Assault Intercessor squad at 5-man 1, a Heavy Intercessor squad, again 5-man, and then a regular Intercessor squad. So like a bit of a mixed bag. He had 5 Blade Guard, 2 Redemptor Macro Plasma Dreadnoughts, I think 8-man Sanguinary Guard squad, 3 Outriders, 5 Eradicators again. And that was pretty much his list. So similar but different to Shaggy's list. And I think because of Shaggy's game, I was sort of quietly confident about this one. I was like, my comfort zone is playing Marines or other Imperium factions. And I was saying to this people on the weekend, I sort of know what they do because I've played them so much, and also because I now collect Space Marines, also get a rough feel of what they do or what their tactics are. When I play against Xenos armies or Chaos, especially Xenos armies, I'm like, I don't know what these people do. Like, I've played Tau like maybe 3 or 4 times. It sort of feels like in all my life, but in recent years. So whenever I come up against them, I'm like, I don't know what this is. You're just saying words at me when they describe all their weapons and stuff like that. So yeah, this game, it was Battle Line. It was a pretty interesting game. He was deep striking his Sanguinary Guard. He had obviously a jump pack chaplain, which he was like jumping forwards. He had his Blade Guard, which was just like this unstoppable force that was moving up the field with Mephiston. He had his Outriders with his Apothecary. I was literally killing an Outrider return. I think maybe even 2 initially, but he kept like reviving one every single turn. It was like this never-ending amount of Outriders, and it took me to like the final turn of the game to like kill them. I basically kept one Hades drill on the board to actually like sort of defend one of my objectives and try and block him off. And I like blocked him as much as possible with my Death Riders, and that was my tactic every turn: fling the Death Riders up, so they're spending pretty much a whole turn just dealing with them, because they are surprisingly resilient in a lot of my games. And a few times my opponents would just be like, oh man, like they're tough, like, because if you can roll the 5s for the feel no pains, they're really good. And because they're 3 wounds, there's a lot of 2 wound damage out there. So especially if you can make like 1 or 2 saves on stuff, it's like there were, a couple of shots just get wasted on killing one, and it's not spilling over onto the next one, for example. But yeah, it was really fun. Like, he deployed one of the assault squads sort of towards the back line. The heavy intercessors in the middle on an objective, and then in the other corner was the regular tactical squad. So I was like, cool, all I need to do is clear off one of those units in the corners, and I know I can probably dump all of my stuff down there. So I went with behind enemy lines, deploy teleport homers, and pierce the veil. So my more risky strategy in terms of stratagems. He took engage on all fronts, grind them down, and retrieve Ogtari's data. He was literally shifting everything up. His assault intercessors went for one objective on my right hand side. I was like countering that with some infantry, and then my Death Riders, and there was like a real battle on that side, which I knew I was slowly winning, although his chaplain came over, and then his Sanguinary Guard dropped down there as well. And I was like, oh dear God, right, okay, I really need to deal with them. I got really lucky with his Redemptor Dreadnoughts. I managed to kill one pretty much, was it outright in my first turn? Like, the Rapiers just, I think, blew one off the table pretty easily. The other one I knocked down to like 2 wounds. Was it 1? I think it was 2 wounds. And then he had overcharged it in his following turn and rolled like 2 1s to hit. So he blew his own Redemptor up, which I'd not seen ever happen before. But I was like, oh my God, yes. Get in there. I quite like that. He had basically moved his assault guys up onto an objective, which meant there was a big Necron building protecting a corner that I was like, I can comfortably deep strike stuff down there when I need to. Yeah. He's got his heavy assault intercessors not too far away, but I'll be hidden out of line of sight. But also that's his home objective, so I know I could put pressure onto that one, which is what I did in the sort of later part of the games. It's like I dropped down the veteran squad, the Scions, all into there. The Scions with the -2 hot shots are actually really good. And if again, I said if you can make them Dragoons so they can double shoot, they could rapid fire from deep strike, they'd be so good. There's one stratagem I used a couple of times, which is Experienced Eye on the veteran squad, which gives them an extra AP. So your plasma's -4, but also your regular las guns are -1, which was quite useful. I only did it a couple of times because the stratagems are quite expensive. Quite often I was trying to save 1 for a charge reroll on my Hades drill. And if I had a Hades on the table, I would sometimes, I think, it only costs 1 point, I think, where you would use Crush them. So you could advance and charge and hit on 2s. I think with that one as well, to kill the Redemptors, I use Hail of Fire. So my Plasma guy, because I think that's how I reduced 1 down to 2 wounds, basically. I used Hail of Fire, which is 2 CP. Against vehicles, you get max shots. And if I remember correctly, that is actually the turret weapon plus the sponsons as well. It's like all your weapons do max shots. So on the plasmas stuff, that's brilliant because it's 12 shots from the heavy and then 6 shots from the sponsons, which is how I just... And even though it's... I can't remember if I even bothered to overcharge with it. I might have, just for the extra strength, because he would have been toughness 7. So I probably did. Even though the -1 damage knocks all the heavy, the actual 2 damage to make it pointless. It's like, well, I'm wounding you better, so that's probably worth it. The key, two key moments was basically he dropped his Sanguinary Guard down. The chaplain's already there because he's like jumped in to the spot where he's going to drop it down. He's getting +2 to charge, so I think he needs like 6s to charge. He fails his charge roll, he re-rolls it and fails it again. So I was like, oh, thank God, because he was going to just charge into my rapiers and like wipe them out. So basically I then have to deep strike stuff down to deal with him. It's like, I've got my tank commanders lined up, I've got my rapiers, I've got some hotshot scions and engineers coming down just to try and shoot them off of that objective. Well, they're near an objective that I'm trying to get. I was having like a bit of a fight for several turns with like the remaining assault marines, a couple of my Death Riders still in it, and a couple of infantry guys just trying to get on that objective, which I finally get off him. I think I also, my scions finally get his home objective as well, to the point where that he had 1 heavy intercessor left. And I'm like, cool, I'm not even going to charge you because I've got like a 10-man squad on that objective now. Yeah, you can shoot at me or charge at me. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But the scions and the tank commander and the rapiers managed to obliterate the Sanguinary Guard off the table, like the turn they dropped down because they failed the charge. So that was like a huge relief that I managed to deal with them, because that was one of his biggest threats. However, on the other side of the board, slowly coming up, are the Blade Guard, Mephiston, and then to the further side with the Outriders and Hades drill having like a... but eventually I think I do kill the Outriders with the Hades drill, although it just took several turns to do. But by that time he's come up, he's attacked my rapiers. Mephiston can fly forwards, attacks my rapiers, kills I think 2 of them. But in return, because on a 4+, if I haven't exploded, I get to shoot again, and my rapiers kill Mephiston as they die, which made them a bit of an all-star. And it's like the one vehicle I can really think of synergizes perfectly with that Krieg regimental trait. If more stuff was worked that good, then that Krieg trait would be worth it. The shoot again stuff, most of the time it doesn't make a difference. So his Blade Guard killed my Lehman Russ tank commander in combat. Everything's blast except the heavy stubber and the las cannon. It's like, that's pointless. So it just can't shoot. It's like he killed one of my artillery pieces in combat. Well, that's all blast, so that can't shoot either. So most of the time it doesn't work with my army at all. But on the rapiers, it's fantastic. So I managed to kill Mephiston, which was awesome. Never killed the Blade Guard because they're pretty much untouchable. at this point. So the game finally ended. I got 12, bring it down. I got 12 for deploy teleport homers, because my officer of the fleet's doing that one, basically, because he's a character. I got 8 for Pierce the Veil. We didn't get to turn 5. And basically it ends 62 to me, and he gets 56. So super close. Not as high point scoring, because we were basically mostly getting 5 points for the primaries, because this one I believe is you've got to control 2, control more, so you're not or control 2, control 3, control more, and most of the time we were just controlling 2 each, and contesting the rest, which was mostly my play. So it was then on the secondaries, and he just didn't score as much, basically. But really good game, really fun. So like the highlight was killing Mephiston in combat as my rapiers died. That was hilarious. So yeah, that was a fun game.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, man. And obviously, congratulations on the win there. Coming up against a winner, and emerging one yourself. I mean, you must have been feeling pretty happy with that, and eager to see what laid ahead of you, I suppose, because it doesn't sound like an easy matchup for you by any stretch of the imagination. I think obviously had those Sanguinary Guard made it in.
Exactly, that was like a real key moment that sort of gave me a chance to stay in the game, basically. And this is the thing with my army, is like I don't really have enough on the table to screen him out early doors, and I think that was like my downfall in a couple of games.
You got like 30 guardsmen, don't you?
Because they get blown off the table just by a stiff look, basically. They don't stay on the table long enough at all. And quite often, they're my resort of these are my backfield, and ideally I would drop stuff in. So I think when Sanguinary Guard dropped down and he failed the charge, I then screened him with I think a grenadier squad came down in front of my rapiers to try and protect him if I didn't kill them, and he was then going to charge them the following turn. But after that happened, Mephiston sort of flew around the back basically to get to them. Because I thought he was such an aggressive army, it's like he's going to want to chuck everything forwards, which would leave me a chance to sort of get between his back lines. The Avenger, I think, survived that whole game. I think it was down to like 1 or 2 wounds by the end, because by that point, because he had I didn't actually deal with his eradicators at all, but I was just sort of out of range or out of line of sight because there was some big bits of scenery in the middle. But eventually he got some shots off on it, which like whittled it down to its lowest profile. And most games I use the Avenger to try and clear out the screening units in his backfield. It's like, oh, there's a unit in the corner which will stop me from deep striking in. Cool, send the Avenger over there so it's got line of sight on it, shoot everything into it, chuck the las cannons maybe into something else, use the thud guns to do the same. But they're just awful. Like they just don't do anything. You're rolling tons of dice, even with blast in some games, and you're killing a couple of things. Like they just need AP on them to make them half decent.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun game.
Yeah. No, it sounds it, man. I mean, all the extra fun for getting the win, I suppose. But yeah, nice. All right, so you're 1 for 1, Phil. You're 1 win away from achieving your goal of a couple wins. So, you're probably feeling okay. So what happens game 3? Who are we looking across at?
I'm looking at last year's tournament winner, Fletcher. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's also...
running his
he was taking Tau this time. So last year he went hardcore competitive and was taking Tau, but he is known as being a painter. He paints the tabletop tactics. A lot of their last year he took Space Wolves, but he is a painter, so he wanted to do something a bit more hobby related this year, and not take something, I guess, they try hard, although it was still a tough list. So yeah, he took Tau, a couple of Riptides, lots of broadside battle suits, 2 of the Forge World stealth drones, which was interesting because they always count as being in cover. They fly, so they're -1 to hit, and they basically have a 2-up save. 2 of the Hammerhead transports with a bunch of Pathfinders in. And I think that was it really. Oh, and a squad of Vespids that he would use for engage on all fronts and deploy teleport homers. It was one of those things, and this is something that happened quite a few times. Is you'd get on a table, and if you've already played on it, or someone has already played on another table, you'd be asked to swap. So I got moved from one table. Because I was meant to replay the Necron table, which would have actually been more helpful to me, but ended up getting moved to another table, and then weirdly get moved again onto this orc table that's very like rigidly squared into grids. So when you're doing Dawn of War, you've got these perfect fire lanes going literally all the way through the streets. A lot of the buildings are actually quite small. So they're not technically obscuring because they're like 4 inches instead of 5 inches. And yeah, we took a long time sort of deploying what we did. Fletcher was being very cagey. He literally had pretty much everything in one corner, like as a big castle. And then a couple of like little units just scattered around. Because basically I was like flushed with confidence from my last game. I took the same secondaries. So I took Behind Enemy Eyes, Pierce the Veil, deployed 10 bolt homers. I was like, I managed to do it last time, and we were doing like hammer and anvil style. I should be able to do it Dawn of War style, where I've got a longer table edge. And I was like, I should be able to kill 1 or 2 units and drop my guys down. Should be possible. He took engage on all fronts, retrieve Octarius data, and then to the last, I think originally he took something else out, and the ITC app flagged up that he'd taken 2 from the same category. So he then changed it to the last instead. Because obviously he's got some big riptides that are probably going to survive because of...
Yeah, they're going to be tough
exactly.
to get rid of. You're not spamming mortal wounds, are you? So they're going to be very difficult to remove.
And basically, turn 1, like his riptide manages to move slightly forward and get line of sight on my rapiers and just blows them off the table like straight away with ease. And I was like, okay. Like I part of me wanted to deploy them to the other side because he had a hammerhead shark there, and I was like, okay, he's probably hammerhead shark. That's what it's called, isn't it?
A whole hammerhead shark,
just a hammerhead. It looks like a shark, though. So basically, he had 2 of those hammerheads sort of just to jump forwards onto the objective. We were playing Overrun. For anyone that's listening along or watching my Instagram feed to look at the photos as I regale you with these stories. So he'd castled up in one corner, and I managed to deploy my rapiers as my very last thing. So I was like, do I go on the side where all of his big units are, or do I put them to the other side where all it's going to do is kill 1 vehicle, and that's pretty much it for the game? In hindsight, I probably should have done that because they wouldn't have been shot off the table by his riptide. But anyway, they got blown up, and I was like, okay, that's a blow. Turn 1. He chucks his drone stealth fighters forwards to like block my Lehman Russ so it can't get out of its little spot that it was in, because it was being relatively protected behind these buildings. So he's like, I'm just going to do this to stop you from getting out to shoot at his riptides. I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll probably just shoot at your stealth drones anyway. But again, -1 to hit, 2+ save, made them quite annoying. And it was like a really tough match. And he spent most of it, I think, just concentrating on screening out his deployment zone to deny me the secondaries. So it was like, okay, he moved his hammerhead shark forwards, and hammerhead forward. His hammerhead shark. So he moved that forwards, and I was like, yeah, he's given me some space to drop some stuff back. And he would put it, and then he eventually, following turn, he'd like deploy his units out, and I was like, no, there's going to be a spot. But then as soon as he moves his hammerhead forwards, he would then disembark the 2 drone units that are inside it and then jump them back to behind some buildings so nothing of mine can see them. And I'm like, oh man, he's done me in here. So Exactly. The only things I
Crafty
have are my
decent.
fly. So my fly is zipping around to try and get line of sight, basically doing like a strafing run along his deployment zone as it moves down, using the wingtip for line of sight to try and shoot at these things. And then I'm using my quad launchers to try and take off and kill these like 2-man units of drones and stuff like that. And it's just not working. The dice roll sort of failed me in that respect. I basically didn't deep strike down any of my stuff till turn 3 because I had to try and clear off these units. And as soon as I did, he then managed to drop his Vespids down to be a real annoyance to again screen me out from actually dropping down into the deployment zone. So it's like, cool, I'll deploy these characters just outside, and if I get another turn, if I get to turn 4, I can walk them into the deployment zone, start doing my stuff. And if I get turn 4 and 5 of them doing their actions and doing Psychic Veil, I'll be getting my 8 points and 8 points for deployed teleport homers. But as soon as I did that and I dropped my guys down, he literally just moved his entire army from its corner right in their face and just sort of blew all my models off the table. And then what he did is he just charged them in to my characters. So it's like, yeah, your character's like locked in combat now, so it can't fall back and do an action next turn, which basically kills my whole strategy. So it's like, that was kind of the game at that point. So we got to 4 rounds.
I mean, it sort of sounds like he played his socks off, though, mate. It sounds like he.
We really
outdid
did,
you.
and I should have probably focused more on the primary than maybe worrying about. But at the same time, I think I was a bit annoyed at myself for picking those secondaries. If I had just gone for the play it safe options of engage on all fronts, and deployed, retrieve Octarius data, and still gone for Pierce the Veil, then I probably would have had a better chance. Maybe he wouldn't have bothered about screening so hard, but because all my secondaries were in one basket of being in his deployment zone, like that's all he had to care about. In hindsight, because he obviously hasn't got any psychers, I probably should have just taken the one where I've got to be in the center of the board, because I could have done that relatively easily and just been on the opposite corner from his scary army.
Yeah. I think that's
psychic ritual. Yeah, I should have probably done that for this one, but because I was sort of so laser focused on kind of recreating the magic of my last game, I did myself in there. And
I mean, there's definitely something to be said for. There's definitely something to be said for having a strategy and sticking to it, right? Like you want to sort of do things that work, but at the same time, you suppose you do need a level of flexibility that clearly you didn't demonstrate on this occasion. But at the end of the day, it's good that you've recognized that, and it's good that now you know what other options are available to you, and that comes with just experience of getting more games in. The more you play, the more mistakes you make, the more you learn, and that's an important part of the process.
And on this one, I think, on the last turn, I was going second, so I got to score at the very end. So I sort of realised I could have got control more for an extra 5 points, and all I had to do was kill, I think, 2 Pathfinders that were on an objective, because he'd moved the rest of his army off of that objective. I was like, I've got 2 quad launchers to shoot, like 8d6 shots. I was like, do you want to just take them off, or do you want me to roll? He's like, no, you roll for it. And I was like, okay. I rolled everything. Do you know how many Pathfinders I killed? None.
2.
I was like, dear God, that was terrible rolling. It was, all I had to do was kill the 2 of them.
Mate, you and your
dice. Some games were hot,
dice,
some games were not. This was definitely a not game. And it's just like, It was, some really frustrating moments and rolls. I think, was it in this game? I think it might have been. I basically was chucking my las cannons into like some drones or into something just to, again, kill a screening unit. And I managed to like roll 2 1s to wound with them. So it's like, yeah, okay. And it's sometimes you get games like that where they just don't go your way.
Yes. No, of course. I mean, that's the nature of it though, right? You're rolling dice, and sometimes rolling dice ain't so
No,
ain't so fortuitous.
and I have an
for
interesting
one
story
individual.
about that in my next game. But this one ended 78 to Fletcher, just 30 to me. So I got exactly.
You've fallen from grace, Phil.
I'm quite
You were
exactly. I was quite
you were up
happy.
there.
I'm quite happy to lose if I can do as a high scoring game. But this time it
Okay.
was not to be, because I got literally 0 for all my secondaries. Like I really got done over sort of by myself and by Fletcher's game plan. So yeah, that was my undoing. If I had managed to, like, you know, score my average for the secondaries, I probably could have had an extra, and we got to 5 turns, I probably could have actually an extra like 30 points, so I would have had a bit more of a reasonable score. And you have to think about it when it comes to like the final rankings. You know, everything's done on, you know, your total accumulated points. So and I sort of realized that from last year, so I'm always like, okay, even if I'm not winning, just score as many points as you can possibly get, because that does matter in the like overall rankings. So that one didn't help because it was a low score.
All right. So game 4, mate.
Game 4
How's that
was
looking?
against Martin Waller. People might know his name. He's quite a renowned painter. He's got a lovely Death Watch army. He is fantastically painted.
I believe I follow him on the grams, if I remember. He's got that very, very cool Death Watch list, if I remember correctly.
He's got a Storm Speeder, is it Storm Speeder Strike? The one with the like hammer, I'm going to say hammerhead again. It's got the kind of like super missiles on the top, 2 shots, strength 10, the Las Talon.
Oh, the one with the
hits on 2s.
Yeah, the one with the spotter on the sides, and then
so he's got one of those. He's got not macroplasma redemptor. He's got the Gatling cannon variant that he actually put into reserve to deep strike down with some Death Watch shenanigans. He's got like a 5-man outrider squad, because obviously he like combat squads them, so he's got them on their own. He's got the chaplain on bike as well, which he takes with them. He's got a smash captain with jump pack, and I believe some kind of relic which gives him an aura of an invuln save, and he put that with his outriders and his chaplain. So they were all like, I think had a 5-up invuln save. And I was like, great, that's a really good idea. He's like, I haven't done that all my other games until now. And I was like, well, sensible, because it's a good option. He's got the Death Watch specific flyer, the transport one, the Black Corvus Black Star. No troops in it, because he's like, people just shoot it off the table. So it's just running around as a gunship. He's got some Vanguard vets. He's got, you know, regular kind of like, you know, the kill teams. He's got a couple of each, like the standard ones, and some of the. He's got the Phobos ones, so he's got like a squad of. He's got a regular kind of Phobos squad, which he plonks down right in the middle of the table on an objective straight away. Then he had a squad of eliminators up on some rocks ready to snipe some of my characters, which he was desperately trying to do for a lot of the game. It was a really fun game. It was really good. We were playing sweep and clear, so it was like table quarters. We were playing on this like rather cool rocky lava table. We were sort of, in a way, I was at a disadvantage because there was a massive piece of mechanicum terrain going right across the middle of the board, which basically, if I'm shooting at him, everything's at -1 to hit for most of the game, with the exception of sometimes I'd have my quad launchers were on like either edge, so sometimes they could target stuff and not go through that terrain for the -1. He went for engage on all fronts, overs of moment, and direct assault. So direct assault is control my objective or control the middle, which combos really well with overs of moment, which is to control the middle one. So he was just chucking a lot of stuff down that onto that middle objective. I had like cannily positioned my rapiers to hide out of line of sight, which is what I try and do most turns. They've only got a 4-inch move, so it's like, can I just jump out on my turn to like shoot at something? which is what I tried to do with that. I went for engage on all fronts, retrieve Octarius data, and pierce the veil. So I went for my, let's play it safe this time, because obviously you're doing table quarters as well. So it's I sort of felt like that was probably the best way of doing it. Although weirdly with that one, his deployment edge is all the way along, so you can actually do pierce the veil in like the far corner, where is like nowhere near his deployment zone. So you can be quite cheeky with where you put your psyker, basically. It was a good game. I was just trying to. I basically charged in my Death Riders, charged in a Hades drill like turn 1 by advancing it, doing crush them to like try and kill the stuff on his objective. I basically used old grudges on his Outriders because I sort of thought they were like the biggest threat to try and deal with them. I basically chucked everything into them as well for as long as I could, and was like holding them up with some Death Riders. The chaplain was just going around stomping on everything that I tried to screen, so we had a real fight for one objective. He basically had the center for the whole game. I couldn't really do much about that, so he was scoring like pretty much 4 points for over the moment every single turn. His fly was roaming about, but I managed to eventually kill that with the rapier and the tank commander. His Redemptor dropped down, and I kind of killed that again quite easily with the rapiers, which was like a bit of an all-star in that game. The funniest moment though of the entire tournament, so I've got my Avenger fighter. I've sort of moved it up to like shoot at those Outriders. So he basically had the captain with them and basically charges into me. It charges the Avenger because he's got a jump pack so he can attack it. I pay 1 CP for Overwatch. I pay another CP for defensive gunners, which means I can Overwatch on a 5+. I knock the captain from full wounds down to 1 wound left. I was like, he was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I was like, wow, that was some good rolling. Because obviously while he's got an inbound save, it's like I've got 10 shots. It's -2 damage, so it's great for doing damage. Plus, I had the las cannons as well, which I can't remember if I hit on them or not. He like smashes the Avenger up down to its lowest profile because he's got like a relic Thunderhammer. It's doing 4 damage. It's still alive though. I can't remember if it was like 1 or 2 wounds. It was something like that. So I'm doing. Oh no, maybe it was second to last. I think I was doing maybe D3 attacks. So I'm doing D3 attacks, but hitting on 6s. But I managed to cause a wound on him. So I hit on a 6. I think I'm wounding on 3s. He's got a 2-up save. He rolls a 1. He then re-rolls it. He rolls a 1. And we're like, oh I can't believe it. He's like, oh, my day. He's always like, oh, my Smash Captain never does well. A bit like my Smash Captain. And I was like, oh, you've just been sucked into my jet engine. And that was, to me, like the moment of the game and ultimately the tournament. It was so hilarious, like so bad for him, but so good for me. I managed to like drop all my guys down in my later turn. So all my Scions come down, shoot him up. I managed to wipe off a couple of units, eventually kill his Outriders. So I've like shored up one side. And basically he had a big building on his side that I managed to hide my 2 characters behind, and then sort of I don't know on that side. I'm trying to remember now. I'm sure I dropped some. Maybe I just dropped some units down on that side to like try and shoot up some of his guys because I know I've got to deal with them. Because behind the Outriders, he had another squad of another kill team, which I knew I just had to kill him basically.
I'm looking at his photos here, Phil. He commits the terrible sin of match play games, which is he takes firstborn Marines.
Oh, he does. Yeah, I know you're not a fan of that, but it
just irks me. It irks me a little bit, Phil. I look at this and I think, well, what's that then? What's that? Is that a Primaris Marine or is that firstborn? Oh, it's a firstborn.
I realised he's also got an ATV, which did some damage. I think on the fighter. The ATV is very cool. Cool. I killed it though. I was pretty pleased about that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
get dead.
Um,
But no, I'm I'm just in organized play. I don't mind if people do it in the sense that if I had to play against it, fair enough, do what you want. But it does still.
I know you.
I
wouldn't
wouldn't do
know
it,
you
Phil.
wouldn't.
I
Overall,
wouldn't
like
do
to
it.
me, it's like it's pretty clear what stuff is. Like he's got some guys with old style
I don't
jump
think it is.
packs. They're clearly like the Vanguard vet type of dudes. Oh, he had a squad that was just like all frag cannons, which were pretty good, but not as nasty as they used to be. Yeah, at the end, it's like sort of down to the wire. He's clearly got that objective in the middle. The Vanguard vets, because I went first, he gets the second turn. Like in our last turn, he like jumps his Vanguard vets forwards because he's like, I'm trying to get engaged on all fronts. And also, I had like one squad, half a squad pretty much left on one objective. So he's like, right, I'm going to move around and shoot you off of that one. And then I'm going to just chuck my, I think he had like 3 Vanguard vets, and he's going to chuck them at my rapiers because they're the only things like sat on that objective. And obviously, I think his is still like OBSEC as well. And he's like, they can't shoot in combat. And I was like, no, they can't. But then I completely forgot that they can shoot when they die. So when he kills them, I'm like, cool, let's see if I shoot back. And on a 4 up, it's like one of them gets to shoot. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I don't know if I would have done that if I knew you could do that. And I was a bit like, oh yes, like I forgot, like I'm not trying to do a gotcha. But it's just because he was like, oh, they can't shoot in combat. And I was like, well, I can when it's like my turn, I can shoot, obviously, because they're vehicles, right? That's how I was trying to explain it. But yeah, I forgot at the time to go, well, when they die, they get to shoot on a 4+. So
I mean, how dare you conceal that top tier competitive strategy?
Yeah. Ultimately, I get to shoot. I think I maybe kill one of them, but the 2 remain. So he snatches that objective off of me. We only got to 3 rounds. If we got to 4 and 5, I mean, it could have gone either way because it was so close. And I had a lot of units still left sort of in his deployment zone because I dumped everything down there. So basically, I have 54 points at the end. He has 59 points. So I scored 8 for engage, 8 for retrieve, and 8 for pierce the veil. Potentially, I could have scored like max points for pierce the veil for the following if we got to turn round 5, because I'd been doing it twice again for retrieve. Could have got more points, and for engage could have got more points. But then saying that, he's getting 4 points for Oaths of Moment every turn. So, it would have still been super close either way. But that was that thing I was saying earlier, like you got to take secondaries that you want to ideally score as soon as possible, because they're progressive. It's like you really got to try and aim to finish your turns, basically, to get those maximum points. Again, sometimes
that's it.
Regardless of whether you win or not, it's like you just want to get those points for the final scoreboard at the end. So it's worth doing, not just for that, but it's good. Anyway, it was a good fun game. His dice rolls were as abysmally bad as mine. So that felt like it was a fun game because like, you're running really badly and I'm running really good. This feels like a rare change for me to have some hot dice.
A rare privilege, mate. All right, fine. So, Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Tau,
Death Watch.
So, game 5,
it was
Space Wolves?
Adeptus Mechanicus.
Oh my goodness!
Exactly, the ultimate.
So you lost that horribly,
well,
and that was the end of it,
this is the thing. So this was up against Martin Cato, who's a lovely chap from Sweden. He runs the Malmo tournament over there. I've met him at previous no retreats, but it's the first time we were playing. He was in contention for the wooden spoon, so he would.
Oh, so by extension,
well, no.
So
in his previous games, I think he'd lost his first 3 games, then won his 4th game,
right.
Which I had lost. So at that point, we were on 1 win each. But before he won his game, he was in contention for the wooden spoon spot. But someone did ultimately win the wooden spoon and get all 5 losses. But he had like what a very like archetypal good Space Marine list. Sorry, not Space Marine, AdMech. He had some 2 lots of 2 of the Striders with the las cannons, another squad of 2 with the lances. He had a 5-man punchy robot squad because he's Lucius.
Nice, good to see.
I believe he was running our favorite strategy of teleporting robot death bomb. So that was something I had to watch out for. Obviously, he's got his martial, his dominus and manipulus. He's got 2 of the floaty boats with the mortars. He's got a 20-man squad of Skitarii Rangers and Skitarii veterans. Yeah, Vanguard. Sorry, Vanguard. Yeah, and then a couple of like 5-man squads as well. And I sort of think that was most of the list. Tons of models.
It sounds like a great little list. You would have. It sounds like you would have gotten your.
Well,
your
yes,
stuff
yeah, and it was. I mean, it was tough. He would always say like, it's a good list, but if I knew how to play it, it would have helped. And he had some cards. I think.
Small little barrier to entry.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, he had some cards to help him out, and he did know his rules. But I think as he was playing the tournament, he was working out his list. So I was playing him at his most optimized because he'd finally had 4 games before me to learn how his army works, and the synergies were finally getting pulled off.
So you lost, is what you're saying.
Hold on. Let's.
All right. Okay. Let's hear the story.
So we are playing Scorched Earth. We're obviously, long way. Weirdly, I'm playing on the same map as last time. But by this point, everyone's probably played on, a table that they've already played on because.
You're so far down the
well, I think by the last game, if I was to move someone else from their table, they would then end up on a table they've played, and then it's just like it just doesn't work at that point. So they're like, stay on that same table. And to be honest, I'm like, every time I've moved, it's hurt me because I've ended up on a table that's less conducive to my like list and stuff. Like if I had stayed on the table that I was on with Fletcher, like my first table with Necron sort of terrain, that would have helped me way more because there's so much more proper line of sight blocking terrain than the orc board that didn't really have as much. So, swings and roundabouts as it goes. And yeah, this was quite a good one. Like I took Engage on All Fronts, Retrieve Octarius Data, and Pierce the Veil because he's got so much stuff. I'm not going to play the all eggs in one baskets tactic, but I'm like, I think I can get Pierce the Veil. I think I can sneak a guy in there if I can just shoot him off some of the objectives. He went more heavy on one side than on the other. So I was like, okay, if I aim for the left-hand side, I can do it. There's a big old Imperial bastion, the Dark Angel one with the missile.
Oh yeah.
Vengeance of something of Vengeance, was it?
Yeah, something of Vengeance. Chapel of Vengeance.
Yeah,
Monastery of Vengeance.
So he only had like one squad there. Then he had the Chicken Walkers, and then he had the robots to the right of that. I get the first turn, and luckily managed to shoot a bunch of rapiers into his robots, which I was hoping would kill more than they did. I think they killed 2 in the end of his 5. So I was like, okay, they're going to be stiff work. But I found it so difficult. So again, there's this massive dense piece of terrain in the middle, so it's like he's getting -1 to hit, I'm getting -1 to hit, but he's got stuff that is, his army always counts as being in cover just because it's Lucius, and that's like an army wide thing that lasts every turn. But he can also do other thing.
That's not a Lucius thing.
I think it AP1.
He gets +1 to his save against damage.
Yes, yeah, that was
1 weapons.
But then and obviously most of my army is damage 1, annoyingly. But then he can also give himself +1 to his save, or make something like -1 to hit, or you can do a transhuman type ability on it as well, because he's got lots of loggies to do these abilities at certain times. So basically, even though I can use my quad launchers with blast, he's got a 20-man squad. It's like I'm doing max shots, which I believe is 24 shots, 23, 24 shots. Must be 24. I like kill like two models, if that, with them. And it's like, and that was most of the game. It's like, oh geez, this is rough. His stuff's super durable. But ultimately what happens, we have a bit of a fight in the mid. Oh, he's got the Rust Stalkers as well. And they basically, deployment phase start in the middle of the board. So they're coming at me as well to deal with. Eventually what happens is I kill the close combat chickens with the lances to try and clear off the left hand side. He's got one still squad there remaining of regular like rangers, but ultimately I then pivot and go, actually the right hand side is the better option for me to go at, just because if I deep strike down in that corner on the left, there's a big, the back edge of the board has no terrain on, so he could just move stuff back a little bit and see them and shoot at those characters quite easy. So I can't really screen them out very well. So I'm like, but there's a big piece of terrain on the right hand side, so I can sort of sneak in there. And I managed to carefully position myself. So I've got basically a Hades drill in the far right hand corner, headed towards some chickens. Behind him I've got my astropath and my officer of the fleet, and then sort of next to one of them I've got my second Hades drill, so I've got two to get the charge off on the chickens. And then I basically go, here's some veterans, awesome. Here's some grenadiers. I've dumped some engineers down because he's coming at me with his 20-man squad of not rangers, not veterans, what are they called? Vanguard, that's it, sorry.
Vanguard.
So they're coming at me along with the Rust Stalkers. I managed to deal with the Rust Stalkers eventually in, like, I think my final turn by basically overcharging my tank commander into them. And I have to say, the tank commander did pretty well most games. Well, if I was doing a more competitive list, I probably would have. And I don't know what it was, but most people didn't see it as the threat that it was. And I don't know if it's because I played it really cagey and he was right at the back, or people saw the rapiers and they were way more scary, basically. Or they look at things like the Hades drill or the Death Riders as, oh, these are the things I need to kill this turn. And, I was chatting with Martin afterwards. He's like, yeah, I really should have dealt with that tank commander sooner. And I was like, yeah, because it's good. Even like the crappy plasma version, which to me I think is solid because you're just doing flat 2 damage. I like the simplicity of it, and it had the range as well. Like if that was a demolisher tank version, I couldn't have shot at the robots, and I used it to shoot the robots because you've got the 36-inch range. With 24 I'd have had to have gone up within line of sight, and I would have been shot at by all of his stuff. Instead I'm playing much more like caging defensively, using line of sight to so if he did have to shoot me, it'd be like -1, or I'm limiting the amount of like anti-tank weapons that can shoot at it while I'm still getting line of sight on what I want to shoot at. So there's a real like fight on this right hand corner. I basically he was coming at me on my objective, because he went for, and I forgot to say this, so he went for raise, which is the mission specific objective, because he's like, if at the end of my game I do that once, I'm getting like, was it 5 points or something? He was like, I'm quite happy with that. He took eradication of the flesh, which is he has to kill more of my infantry than I kill of his vehicles, which I was like, okay, that's a really hard one for me to do. So yeah, he was scoring like 3 points in all but the first turn, because neither of us really killed much in the first turn. And then he was doing retrieve Octarius data as well, which he mostly forgot about, so he only got 4 points overall from that one because he sort of forgot about it. Yeah, so he was coming at me again. He's going second, so I know that he's going to get this objective of mine and he's going to raise it. So I need to just pump everything into that unit. And this is weirdly, we only got to 3 turns in this game because we both got massive armies that's just lots of infantry. Like our shooting phases just took forever, and also we're like mates. We know each other quite well now, having met each other like 3 times at these events. So it was that, and it was the last game of the tournament. So we were like, yeah, we're just going to kind of have fun and enjoy ourselves. So we probably didn't play as quickly as we should have, really. But we get to this point, it's like I need to kill the stuff on this objective. I've got my engineers as well. They've been down for a turn, so I can move them up. And basically, I use the grenadier stratagem with them, so they all get to chuck their grenades. And if I remember rightly, they are so you get D6 shots per person, and I think I was doing this like on a 10-man squad, so I'm doing like 10 D6 shots because they're all within 6-inch range. If I remember, I also put an order on them for like reroll 1s to hit. They hit on 3s normally, so then they'd be rerolling 1s as well. They auto wound on a 2+, and it's I think -2, and then it's either 2 damage or D3 damage. I can't remember which, but that combined with the tank commander sort of obliterate all of his units that were sort of contesting that objective. The objective that's near on that right hand side, that's in the middle of the table, he only had a 5-man squad on there, and I dumped the grenadiers down to shoot them off of that one, so he was no longer contesting that one as well. So yeah, by the end on round 3, it's like he gets I only actually got control 1. He only got control 1, control 2, but he didn't get control more, which was key, really. I just managed to get Pierce the Veil off because I've had my Psyker down in his corner for like 2 turns. He was desperate to get at him as well, and he did in the last turn. So my 2 Hades drills both failed the charge on his las cannon chickens. So in his turns, he sort of shoots them up and then charges into the that was it. He in his last turn, well, no, second to last turn, so turn 2, he charges at my Psyker, but doesn't kill it. He managed to do like 1 or 2 wounds, but he doesn't kill it, so it's still alive. So in my last turn, which was turn 3, I needed to basically just do Pierce the Veil while I'm in combat with these chickens. Because I'm like I can't fall back into a psychic power, but I can stay in combat. But as long as I get off this psychic power, I'm fine because I'm getting my 8 points, and I'm kind of like, this is my comfortable average for Pierce the Veil, so I'm just happy with that. And then he's probably going to die the following turn, but it doesn't matter. So it was, and I managed to kill the robots that were like on the other flank, but it's a real but by that point he's moving his stuff around, like his 20-man squad of unkillable rangers, basically, to sort of shoot me off of those objectives. So there's a bit of a stalemate. I dropped down some grenadiers with the melters to finish off the robots as well, because there was like 1 left. So I was like, I dumped that squad over there because they also couldn't fit, because he'd screened me out relatively well, but because there was this ruin in the way, or this Mechanicus units, all his units couldn't quite completely screen me out, which is where I managed to cheekily dump in my characters and the Hades drill and the grenadiers. But ultimately it finishes, I get 49 points, and Martin
49,
yes,
big
not
score.
A huge score, but again, we only got to the 3 rounds, so that's why. And he got 40, so I beat him by 9 points. So super close. And if I hadn't got Pierce the Veil off, I'd have only won by 1 point. So that's how close it could have been. But luckily, the Psyker manages to do his job, basically.
Nice. Paying for himself. So there we go, Phil. 5 games, 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 game finished in the entirety of the thing. I mean, what are the life lessons off the back of this? Finish your games. Think more about the secondaries.
Well, here's the thing. I think I did the secondaries really well this time. Like, clearly you're scoffing and you don't believe me, but I had.
No.
I had a game plan with the secondaries, and I did it every single game beyond the one against Tau, where he screened me out completely. But beyond that, I felt like I scored really well on the secondaries. It's a lot harder to do the primaries more than anything, to be honest. And ultimately, I'm playing guard. Like, they're not a good codex. Every other army I played against bar Tau was a 9th ed army, so I felt like I did pretty well, all things considered. It was an army list I had to basically create in a day, and I didn't want to go super try hard by taking lots of tank commanders and stuff like that. I felt like I did the right secondaries most of the time, and in comparison to the previous year where I took lots of tanks, that time I was like, I don't know what I'm picking. I guess I'm going engage, retrieve, and some other thing that I can never remember which one I actually went for, because it's like, therefore matchup dependent, really. In fact, weirdly, I think that time I also took a psyker, but when I did, I took the one where you're doing it in the center that we talked about, psychic ritual. I took that one a couple of times, but only on the missions where they had no psychers, so I knew I couldn't be denied. So I did that at previous event. This year I felt like I knew what I was doing with the secondaries, and ultimately I played it a bit better. I think I didn't have enough board presence turn 1 and turn 2 because I had so much off the table. But yeah, in terms of lessons, it's like, and how to score better, basically, like, as you say, finish the turns, even if maybe you need to go, okay guys, let's just focus on what matters. And I was a bit like that in a couple of games, like, okay, and I did feel like in some games I was rushing to basically do my turn super quick because my opponent was taking a bit longer in their turn, and it's like I really wanted to make sure we squeezed in an extra round. So there were definitely times, like I know against Fletcher, I made mistakes because I was just trying to rush and get my turn done as quickly as possible. Like, bish bash bosh, here we go. Oh, I'm not going to even bother shooting with these because ultimately it's a bit meaningless. Yeah, I mean, I might kill 1 or 2 of your guys, but it's not getting you off of that objective. It's not scoring me anything. So, let's just skip that over and get on with it. And I would be quite happy, if we both played like that in some of our games, then maybe we'd have got more turns in. But it sort of is what it is. People are there to play the game how they want to play it, and we're also there to have fun as well. So, that's why people don't want to be rushed. I hate getting rushed in games. And some armies just don't really play at smaller sizes. Like with guard, unless you are taking lots of tanks, it's hard to, even if you do take lots of tanks, it's still, you still got lots of shooting to do, or you got to be really careful with your movement or what have you. So I think some armies just don't play quick, and guard is one of them. Like, it is really hard to get a full 5-round game in, I think, with guard, sort of regardless. And I think the only reason why I did it with Shaggy is because he's just such a quick player as well, so he sort of made up for my deficit maybe. But also because I think that was quite a devastating game on both parts. Like, you've both got less models, whereas against like me and Martin Cato at the end, we've still got tons of models on the board, because we're both shooty, but most of my, his is super resilient because I just couldn't shift it for the life of me. But then when my stuff dropped down, it was still alive after a turn of him shooting back at me. So if it had gone on to turn 4, turn 5, I think it would have been so much quicker. And that's the thing. Turn 1 takes forever. Turn 5 takes no time at all. But you need to get to that kind of turn 4 to be like, turn 5's like 10 minutes. So let's just quickly squeeze it in. In terms of lessons for the army, it's like, I think the rapiers were the all-stars. Like, them, when firstly, the firepower of them is devastating. When they die, they get to shoot again, and if you're lucky, like, that happened pretty much most of my games. Like, 2 out of 3 times they were shooting again, so they were doing something. Like, managed to kill some units on death, which was quite funny. So I managed to, like, I'm pretty sure I managed to, one died in my last game, but then I shot a robot, for example, and stuff like that. So they were really good. The Hades drills, they should be good, and I want to like them, but they're just not great. And I don't know if that's like the matchups I was against, or just the fact that if you deep strike them, they just fail their charges and then they get shot off the table the following turn. Keeping them on the table is probably the best option, but I wish they had a 10-inch move, but they don't. They've got a 6-inch move, so that's hard to do really, unless your opponent's basically being super aggressive. But that's probably the best way to play them, to be honest. Is keep them on the table. But ultimately, you know, it was cool that I did the combo with deep striking the veteran squad. I found that quite useful, but I could have got rid of them, and I have invest those points in another tank commander, which would have infinitely done more damage, I feel like, because it's on the table from turn 1, it's shooting stuff up from turn 1, whereas the Hades drills come down turn 2, fail their charge. If they're getting in combat, it's turn 3 onwards, and you know, turns are lasting till turn 3 and turn 4, so they're not great. And then the last change is the the thud guns, like the quad launchers. They're just rubbish. They're like 80 points each or something. They're just
7th edition is a distant memory
edition.
at this point
They could comfortably kill a squad hands down of most things. Like
yep.
Even Marines, because I'm sure they had an AP value, maybe not enough, not AP3 as it was then, but they were killing stuff like against, and I'm sure against orcs or against admech that aren't super durable, they should do a lot of work. But even against the admech, it's like, cool, I'm killing 2 or 3 models at a time with them, and it's like they should be killing 8-10 models on a 20-man squad when they're getting their full blast off, and they're just not. So I would take them out. I think the best option. Oh, and then the last game I also used the Grenadier Stratagem. I'm sure I mentioned that. So the engineers were really good. The shotguns, strength 4, really good. The Death Riders, actually, I also realised the Savage Claws have a -1 AP on them now, which made them slightly good.
Yes.
They're still not good, like overall in terms of damage output. Like trying to get the charge off is quite difficult because normally turn 1 I double move them to charge them forwards, so they're getting charged, so they're not getting their hunting lance bonuses off at all. If I had more of them, that would probably be better. You could probably start then going, I'm going to be a bit more aggressive with them and use them as a killing unit. But ultimately, I think they're just a good distraction unit turn 1 to get shot at and just be durable. And then you have your other units following up. So yeah, I would ditch the quad launchers. I'd ditch the Hades drills, if I'm honest. I'd probably actually take 2 Storm Chimeras, or not Storm Chimeras because they're not that anymore. 2 Chimeras, put some engineers in each one, or potentially Grenadiers. But the engineers I would put in them because then they can just jump out, move where they need to be, ideally within 6 inches. Then you're paying your 1 CP for your Grenadier Stratagem to like murder something, because they did really good amount of work killing Martin's Space Marines. They did a really good job of also killing other Martin's admech units as well. Like the Grenadier strat, people have always raved about it, and I'm like, nah, it's hard to do. And it is hard to do, but you've got to position your models first to maximize it. And they are actually really good now. Like if you can do it, but that won't exist in the new codex. I'm sure the Astra Militarum Codex will get rid of it because it's just too good. And other examples where they had it, like the Death Guard Codex, don't have it anymore. Yeah, so I'd probably do that. The Avenger Fighter was reasonably good. It survived most games. Other games that just got shot off the table. It's a good sort of distraction unit, I think. Or sometimes people just ignore it and then it can be free to do stuff. And it was mostly used for creating a spot for my army to come down in, so clearing some screens and letting my army come down. Yeah, overall it was, I think there was a lot of positives in that list build. I took too many relics. I would get rid of the Scion relic for the extra order on the Grenadiers, because quite often I wouldn't put them down near each other. I'd do one squad with the melters somewhere completely random to take out a vehicle of some kind, and normally the officer with him to give them target elimination protocols, which is reroll all wound rolls against vehicles. So that was a really cool combo. And then the other squad would just be on the other side of the board dealing with some other threat. They wouldn't be close enough to use the Vox casters. And the 2 orders, so I'd get rid of that one. I'd probably I had the laws of command, I should have said, on my main field marshal, which means I can issue 1 order to my infantry, and then on 4+ I can do another one. And then you've got your Vox casters, so that was quite useful because I could spread out my guardsmen and then still do move with one of them, even though it was on the other side of the table. But ultimately, the laws of command wasn't that useful overall, especially when the regular officers can't order the scions because they're not the same regiment keyword, which was a bit frustrating actually, because quite often, sometimes my Death Rider commander would be near the scions, and it's like, okay, you can't actually give them an order. Okay, that's a bit rubbish. So I'd probably ditch that relic as well, and sort of save my relics and save my CP, basically. And ultimately, if it was a no retreat event, I'd be taking my scions as dragoons, so they're getting their rapid fire when they deep strike, which would make them super killy. So yeah,
nice. No, it sounds logical, mate. It sounds like a good event overall. Another lovely trip to the Rock, to the Gibraltar. Well done on representing the pod once again, and obviously beyond the tabletop as well, your own native domain. No, you did us proud. I mean, obviously it would have been nice if you'd gone 3-2.
I know. I mean, I didn't do 3-2 last time, but I'm sure I've done 3-2 before, like one of the earlier ones when it wasn't 9th edition. It would have been 8th edition, I think. I maybe did 3-2 early doors, and I don't know if it's just because Guard really struggle, or I'm not, I don't have the competitive go-to units, i.e. Bulgrin, for a Guard army, or Manticores with full payload, which are like probably the 2 auto includes that any Guard player would have, and so I don't have either of those, so I'm sort of hamstringing myself. If I wanted to play Guard competitively, I wouldn't be even taking Krieg. What I would do is I would take 1 detachment that is tanks. They've got their own custom regiment traits for like reroll number of shots, for example. Artillery with reroll number of shots would be great. Would be taking Krieg for engineers, Death Riders, and Rapiers. Those are like the 3 units, and obviously like maybe not even an officer, like a Death Rider commander. Those are the things I would take as Krieg. Regular Krieg infantry, artillery or whatever, a separate detachment, like custom regiment traits, just anything other than Krieg at the moment, because the rules for them just aren't that great. It's like, ignore combat attrition modifiers. It's like, I've still lost 1 guy, and then I might lose another couple more anyway because I'm rolling 1s. It's like that benefit didn't really help me out in any games all that much. I probably saved 5 guys over the course of the weekend with that special trait. It's like I'd rather something else that actually does something, like a reroll 1 to hit or whatever. Like they're just not good in that respect. The rapiers and the shooting, again, brilliant stratagem. If I had the points and money, I would probably get another squad of them, or potentially split them out into separate units so they're not all bundled together. But then that was the joy of it, because I could just point at one thing and I'm rolling 9 shots and I'm probably gonna kill it. If there's a way of getting them rerolls to hit, like through Yarrick, that would be great. And that's the only way I can think of buffing them at the moment. And I thought about it in hindsight, and it's not something I would do, and it's something we talked about in the podcast. You could be really gamey with them, and so obviously a few times people got into close combat with them, which was fun when I got to shoot them back and kill them. But what you could do, you can put the crewman in front of the rapiers, and technically, as you like to say, technically screen them out, because those models are still have a physical presence on the board, but they don't count for anything in terms of measuring to the unit. So if you want to get in close combat with the unit, you have to get in close combat with the artillery piece itself. And likewise, shooting line of sight has to be from the artillery piece. You ignore the crew, but the crew are still on the board and they're still in the way. So you could actually have your artillery pieces, your rapiers, behind the crewmen that are in front, forming a little line that basically force your opponent to have to go around them for, like, you know, a couple of extra inches on the charge or something, for example. But to me, that's like such a gamey mechanic. I wouldn't ever do that at an event, even at a proper tournament. I wouldn't, because it's just not the intention or spirit of the game. But if you really wanted to, if you were that inclined, you could. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. All right, mate. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your account of the event. I guess we're going to transition now to whatever it is we decide to do next. Transitional noise. Woo! Wow. All right, then. That's pretty much the end of the show. Although you know better than that, because we will have some other things that need discussing. Most notably, Phil, their new Black Templar bits. Ooh, cool, blimey.
Are we talking about Chonky Boy?
Chonky Boy, Big Fatty.
Chonky
I love Big Fatty. I think he is a beautiful fatty boy. Here is a thing, right? So we are talking about, for anyone who is curious about what the heck Big Fatty could refer to, we are talking about the Castellan that has been released. So the Castellan, as far as I can ascertain, is some form of Black Templar's lieutenant.
Correct.
Is that not accurate? So they've got their marshals, which are their captains, and then they've got their Castellans, which are their lieutenants. Now, intriguingly, there's been a little bit of a hubbub about old Fatty, because the good people of the Warhammer community team, the, custodians of, quality communications when it concerns consistency and or accuracy in the world of Warhammer 40,000, and I imagine other gaming systems, have deemed via various community communique over the course of this week that old Fatty here is in fact a Primaris Marine. And I think this is another fantastic instance of our friends in Warhammer community not knowing their bottoms from their elbows when it comes to actually what's going on with this. Because, I mean, the first thing that hinted that this guy is clearly not a Primaris Marine is the fact that there is a Primaris Castellan called a Primaris Castellan, whereas this guy is called a Castellan. So from the outset, there's a pretty obvious clue in the literature and or documentation being released around this guy to strongly assert that he is not Primaris. But yeah, and there are other clues as well, but I'm just going to get your take on it, Phil. Do you feel like old Fatty is a Primaris Marine, or in fact a beautiful modern day representation of a firstborn Marine?
I mean, it's a bit like, is it Schrodinger's cat? It's like he could be one or the other or both at the same time. I'm a bit like, it doesn't matter, really. I know people are probably a bit head up. I don't care if it's Primaris or not. To me, it doesn't look like Primaris because, so it is based very faithfully off an old John Blanche piece of artwork. It is probably the most like miniature accurate representation of a piece of artwork. I think they did it once before with the John Blanche's Sisters of Battle one, when they released the first like new style. Well, it wasn't really new style. One of the first new Sisters minis, but it was in fine cast. There was like a sort of celebration model that was kind of like a 1-for-1, relatively accurate piece, as is this guy.
They did it with the, I think it was the 25th anniversary or maybe the 30th anniversary. They did the captain from the Rogue Trader cover, so the Crimson Fist captain with the scenic base. They did that one, And they also did for the last of the games days back in 2012, 2013 time, they did the Blood Angels Captain with Power Fist from the cover artwork of second edition box set. So there have been instances of them doing this.
Yeah, I always find that they tend to reimagine it or make changes here and there.
No, those two were pretty
Okay,
accurate,
I mean,
would
because
say.
this one is almost flawlessly accurate based on that mini.
Oh yeah.
By
Yeah,
that
yeah.
logic, it should be a firstborn. It's got the old style, face grill, which to my knowledge we haven't really seen in Primaris. I know some of the Phobos units have a similar sort of face grill, but it is also different. Whereas this guy is, I mean, it'd be interesting to see the scale of him. I presume he's Primaris scale and is, for all intents and purposes, Primaris. And as we sort of said in, the last segment, I don't mind it. It doesn't matter. They're kind of interchangeable now. Obviously, lore reasons, they're meant to be a difference. I sort of feel like with the Black Templar range, we're seeing a real merging of the two, where they're now becoming one and the same. And on one reason, that's why I don't like these. I love these models, but from a lore perspective, I don't like them because old school Black Templars were so baroque and highly detailed and ornate because these pieces of armor have been passed down thousands upon thousands of years, 10,000 years. These pieces of armor have been given to new Marines. They've become relics. They've been worked on as masterful pieces of artwork in their own right. And that's happened over 10,000 years, which is why old school firstborn Marines are so heavily detailed and lavish. And it's like Primaris were all very clean cut, like factory fresh new armor. And it's like, and we're about technically in the lore 10 years in, and all of a sudden there is as detailed and as fancy as firstborn armor that's been around for 10,000 years. To me, that doesn't make sense from that lore perspective, which is why I don't like Primaris Marines being super ornate and fancy. And weirdly, I think when Primaris first came out, I did want them to look like that, but now I've kind of grown to love the more minimalist style of most of the models, and I like that distinction between the two. It's like the old stuff is the fancy ornate stuff, the new stuff a bit more simpler and pared back, and the weapon loadouts are a bit more weirdly Horus Heresy era, because that's kind of where they've derived from from the lore. Like Cool was around in Horus Heresy when legions acted in had all plasma squads, which is why we get Hellblasters, for example. So I kind of like all that kind of those little nods, and it's like these guys are just all like factory fresh as baroque masterpieces, which sort of doesn't make sense, but it does from a point of view of going, it doesn't matter whether they're Primaris or not, they're just Space Marines. This is bigger true scale Space Marines looking like the old Space Marines. Just enjoy it. And from that perspective, I think these are fantastic minis, and that this guy, while chunky, is very cool looking.
Yeah. Well, to just throw it out there, though, to sort of add to the point about him most likely not being Primaris, just for the sake of argument, is obviously, and again, as you correctly assert, Phil, this could mostly be driven by the fact that he's a replica of cover art from third edition, but the bolt gun or combi bolter that he wields is very much modeled on the old school style bolt gun. That is not a rifle or a bolt rifle that he wields. Now, we know with the release of the Ultramarines Captain miniature that they did, that it's not uncommon for a Primaris Marine in a position of authority to still use old style bolt guns rather than bolt rifles. But Primaris Marines are typically seen with bolt rifles. Now, obviously, this is quite a specialist weapon because it's a combi flamer. And what's quite interesting about it in terms of establishing, what mark of bolt weapon it is and where it kind of comes from, is the magazine. It's again because of the nature of the sculpt that they've, or rather the artwork they based it on. They've obviously sought to replicate the kind of stocky, blocky, bolt gun appearance. And again, if you actually look at the third edition artwork that dear old Blanche has done here, you've got a mixture of the newer style bolt guns that were established with the third edition multi-part plastic kits, but then you've also got some representations of the old school second edition style bolt guns where they had the chunkier sort of magazines, and this is something else entirely. So it's difficult to assert 100% that this is in the vein of what was done for the third edition kits. But regardless, it definitely isn't a bolt rifle. And then lastly, it's the backpack. That is not a Primaris backpack. That is a standard Firstborn Space Marine backpack, because it doesn't have the extra kind of bits of armor around the vents. So
I thought there was a photo of the back of the model, but if it was,
there was
not on this article.
No, there was. I just can't remember where exactly.
Maybe it was on the social media.
Yeah, but I think one of the earlier releases of what came on it. But yeah, look, I mean, I suppose here's the thing: whether he's Primaris or he isn't, it's relatively moot. It's just an interesting talking point. I think the miniature is really glorious. I think it's great to see this being delivered. Do we know if this is going to be limited release, or is this going to be tied to some kind of exclusive edition, or do you have to spend a certain threshold to get your hands on this guy? I mean, what are they doing with it?
They haven't said. I assume it's just a general release.
Okay.
Seems like it's general release. I mean, who knows with them? Like I said, it is like those. Because even the John Blanche Sisters of Battle one that they did, I'm pretty sure that was always general release as well, even if it is tied to a specific piece of artwork. I mean, it would just be they do limited edition stuff, but it's always silly business model wise to do that. It's a weird one because it's I imagine some people will just buy it to kit bash, but it's just so odd looking as well. It'd be hard to kit bash it for other armies, other than Death Guard maybe. I see a lot of Death Guard in this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your take on the
other thing that's
on the wrestling style belt that he has? Because I've noticed that in a lot of other models as well, like Corso Khan's got it. The
weightlifting belt.
The weightlifting belt. Yeah, I'm sort of weirdly not a fan of.
Keeps his guts in, stops him from having a hernia.
But I'm just not a fan of that design. But it does go back to the artwork, like early days, and more modern stuff. They have done Primaris versions of the belt as well, but I just always think it looks a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't love it. I have to be honest with you. I mean, again, it's very of its era. I think it has a place, but yeah, I don't dramatically love it, but it's fine. It doesn't hugely offend me. But it's it's not my favorite thing. I like the more modern Primaris belt aesthetic they've gone for, like with the Sword Brethren, where they've got
actual sort of belts, but they're more like just sort of belts for the scabbards and holding the tabards in and stuff like that.
Yeah, not the Sword Brethren, sorry, the Blade Guard as well have it, but that kind of look where it's although I think looking at these Sword Brethren now as well, they also do still sort of have this
they are basically the Blade Guard-esque, and I think a lot of people, myself included, are looking at these going, I'm going to convert these up to Blade Guard of some kind, because they look good.
Yeah, I think the Sword Brethren's another interesting one though, right? Because these are called now Black Templars Sword Brethren. So they're not Primaris Sword Brethren. I was just checking on the Games Workshop site, so they do still have Black Templar Sword Brethren, the original Firstborn variant of them available. They have them listed on the site, but they are now temporarily out of stock online. So I'm assuming they're just sacking all them off and now just cycling into that. But it's interesting that they're not choosing to call this a Primaris Sword Brethren squad, almost as if the Sword Brethren of the Firstborn are now
you're effectively doubling the size of their supplement if you do, because obviously you got Helbrecht, Grimaldus, they're now Primaris.
Thing is, I'm all right with them going, you know what, we're gonna upgrade these guys. I'm less cool with them like changing a unit entirely. Although obviously I suppose if they're all on the same bases, because Sword Brethren just come on regular Marine bases, or are they like the Blade Guard and they come on like Terminator
the
bases?
original ones I would assume would be on 32s. Yeah.
Regular Marine bases, yeah.
These ones,
It looks like from the photos.
yeah, they do look
40s.
like they're on Blade Guard ones because they're kind of Blade Guard size. So yeah, it'd be interesting if they go in the book supplement. There's two options: Primaris and regular, or if they're going no, they're all just now, Sword Brethren. That's your one type. There's no distinction between Primaris and regular, and maybe stat wise there is no difference now. So why have the same unit doing the exact same thing? The only thing we haven't, because we've never done that before, we've never done Primaris tactical squads, and if we did, they would just be called tactical Marines, wouldn't they? And there's a new Primaris kit for them. There's no reason in a codex to call them by anything else just to make the distinction between Primaris and non-Primaris. They function exactly the same, so I guess that's what they're doing here. It's like they're Primaris, but it doesn't matter if they're Primaris.
Yeah, I think again though it's all part of that kind of ongoing methodology to sort of normalize and, as you say, amalgamate the Primaris stuff with the Firstborn stuff and just get to a point where it's like it's all just smushed together and who cares, right? Like it's all just Marines.
Exactly.
So
I do love the Lightning Claw guy.
The Lightning Core guy was always one of the stronger sculpts from the original Sword Brethren range. Although when you go back and look at the old Sword Brethren from, I guess they came out around kind of 2005 time originally. God, they look shonky by current standards. Like you go back and look at those old Sword Brethren models, they are very derpy these days compared to what they are. But yeah, those that Lightning Claw mini is super cool. I also
like the sort of, was it Mark III style shoulder pads as well on some of them that are sort of more Blade Guard specific, because that's, if I remember rightly, the Blade Guard shoulder pads are the sort of double pauldron ones that they're more Terminator size than standard Primaris shoulder pads. So it's kind of cool that they've done that as well, which is why I ties in well with my Minotaurs, because I've done that for like my veterans. So I do want to steal these guys and convert them up in some way, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think this is the thing. It's like, the Sword Brethren do look cool. And yeah, like there's some really good stuff within it. I think it's a good
what's interesting is
the upgrades, upgrades and transfers is interesting.
Yeah, so if you can go find Mark Gibbons on Facebook, he's like an old Games Workshop illustrator from back in the 80s and 90s. So much of this equipment is based on his old original sketches, so he's released a lot of those sketches on his Facebook page, so you can see it. So the mace and the power axe from those Sword Brethren are like based on original sculpts of his. Some of, I want to say, the relic sword and some of the other bits of equipment like the relic helmet as well, but all based on his original sketches as well. The actual upgrade kit is fantastic. Like the fact that they've done relics as miniatures, I'm like, why can't they do this for everything now? Because that is so cool. Which does lead to an interesting point going down into the future. It's like, should relics be actually modeled onto a mini if we're going WYSIWYG, which then potentially reduces the flexibility that you have when you build an army, because sometimes you just swap out a relic for whatever game or opponent you're playing or tournament. But now if you've got to actually stick a relic onto a model and that's like a definitive thing, that makes an interesting choice.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to stick, mate. I don't think too many people are going to be falling over themselves to agree to that.
No, I know, but if it becomes more prevalent and every army has got specific, relic models, it could be an argument that down the line that might happen.
It'd have to get to a very specific situation where you had to, penalize someone just because they're, their army has access to an upgrade sprue that no one, at this moment in time, it's
I
just
know.
Black Templars.
But
So,
wouldn't you love it if
you know,
every single army had an upgrade sprue as good as this upgrade sprue?
Oh, of course, like that would be incredible. Like, the level of actual attention to detail they put into this is phenomenal. What's interesting to me is the fact that they've obviously, and I'm intrigued what the plan is for the neophytes that are going to be in this box, because obviously there's a lot of arm swaps for the neophytes in this box. There's the shotgun arms specifically, and then there's the there's one where the dude is carrying a Space Marine helmet, which is an intriguing visual, because the idea of a neophyte holding a helmet, like, I get that it might be doing it for its initiate, so it might be doing it as like
holding it for him. That's my assumption.
Yeah, hold my helmet.
Yeah, like a chapter surf or something. That's my assumption that what he's doing. I've seen a couple of people complain about, like, this is more of a neophyte upgrade kit, because apparently Warhammer community had said the upgrade kit will have loads of standard rifles and stuff with chains attached to them, which the old kit had. So if you want Primaris weapons with chains attached to them, which is lore-wise what they're meant to have, you don't get it in this kit. And as far as I'm aware, the only way of doing it is if you buy the new Black Templars like box set, which has, I think, a standard like Crusader squad in it. Then you get the more modern Primaris weapons with the chains attached to them. So it's like there's no simple upgrade kit for a standard set of intercessors, which is what this upgrade kit seems to be lacking.
Yeah, I don't know.
A minor nitpick. I think, to be honest, most people quite happily convert weapons and chains up. But some people don't like doing that and just want to be able to buy an upgrade kit for it.
It really depends what the long term sort of release strategy is for these guys as well. Because if it is that this Crusade kit is literally all you're getting in terms of neophytes and Crusaders or initiates, as it were, so if it is that you're only going to be able to get access to the shotgun arms through this upgrade kit, and then if you're only going to then do they have the bits to do chainswords and pistols? I've seen images of neophytes with those weapon loadouts, so it's obviously within the realms of possibility. I'm just trying to understand where all these bits are coming from, but again, we'll find out in time, won't we? These things will all start to become clearer as the release starts rolling out.
What's really weird is with the transfers is you don't get the standard like chapter marking, like the Maltese cross. You don't get that for your standard tactical squad or intercessor squad or whatever. So is the assumption that you've got to buy the upgrade kit with the molded shoulder pad chapter markings on, because you only get a couple, like you get a squad's worth, 10-man squad per upgrade kit. It's like and you got to paint those. Some people will be like, just give me the old style transfer sheet to apply them again. Like if you want to, basically it means you got to buy one of those upgrade sprues per 10 men if you want to do upgrade your intercessor squad, unless you can get the transfer somewhere else, basically, which is a generic symbol, so you could probably get someone to print it for you or what have you.
Are you going to be buying the Templars, Phil? You're going to jump on?
I'm going to be buying bits of the Templars for my Minotaurs army, if I'm honest. Like, I'm buying the heck out of this upgrade sprue. That Sword of Judgment is going to be my new Judicia sword, because it is such a much better version of that kind of headhunter choppy mablocky sword with the flat head, because it's like meant to be used for decapitations rather than stabbing people. And there's just some other cool bits in it, like the cool swords, relics. I won't be using a lot of it, but I'll be using some of it for sure. Sword Brethren look very cool, and I wouldn't mind upgrading them into a special version of my Blade Guard, which I might do at some point. As Black Templars, I mean, I think they're pretty fantastic. Like the range that we've seen is overall really good. Obviously, we weren't huge fans of Grimaldus. Hellbeck was amazing. If this was like 2 years ago, I probably would have bought all of this stuff and done a Black Templars only force. But I think for now, I might just buy the odd bit to use for my Minotaurs. One day I'd love to just do a small, force of Black Templars to be Black Templars. But that isn't going to happen anytime soon. I need to finish off my Minotaurs to at least 2,000 points before I start worrying about other types of Space Marines.
Of course. You got to be sensible.
What about you, though?
I mean, is there any? I'm going to buy the box.
The big army box?
Mostly just
the codex.
Yep. Yeah, just to get the codex early, because it's the only way you're going to get the codex. So we're going to push to get that, and then, yeah, I think again, some of the bits will be appreciated. I just really want the Emperor's Champion and the Marshal, really. I mean, the Crusader squad's fine, and I'm sure it'll be. I'm sure. I've just noticed looking back at the box, the chainsword and bolt pistol arms are very much available on the neophytes in that box. But yeah, there's some interesting options within that selection. The Redemptor Dreadnought, I've already got a couple Redemptor Dreadnoughts, so I'll probably find a place to donate the Redemptor Dreadnought into. But yeah, I just really want the Emperor's Champion, the Marshal, the book. So yeah, if you want anything else out of it, mate, you fill your boots. You can have whatever you want. You can have the Crusader squad. There you go.
On you, nice.
Exactly. I mean, for money though, right? Cold hard cheddar.
Okay, we'll see.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. We'll work it out. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to sit in a box if I don't just hand it off to you. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, it's more just a case of just wanting to get my hands on the book early, and also just, I mean, I might use it. I don't know. I'll buy it and figure it out afterwards. I mean, how much you reckon they're selling this one for?
I don't know, but normally they're either like 80 quid or 125 quid, aren't they? That tends to be the two pricing models that they go for.
Yeah, it doesn't look like 125 quid.
No, but you're obviously getting the codex with it as well. But hopefully it would be the 80 quid.
Yeah, it's a supplement though, isn't it? It's not even a codex.
Yeah, true. But
anyway, I guess we'll find out, mate. We'll find out. But no, I'm excited for them. I think they're doing a good job of hyping them up, and they look cool. So yeah, Black Templars, mate. Add them to my ongoing Grey Shield collection.
Nice.
It'll be fine. Got a lot of work to get done on that ahead of RFW still, but I'm making progress, Phil. Making progress.
Well, tell us, what have you been up to?
I've just been painting Space Marines, mate. It's not really anything interesting at this point. Once I've got something interesting to say on it, I'll share it. At this moment in time, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, painting a few Space Marines, getting them done. Practically finished a unit of intercessors. Practically finished a unit of eliminators. Got to get those done this week, and then next week got to get the Redemptor Dreadnought done, and then yeah, it's just basically going through it. I'm working out the best way to approach Gilliman, because Gilliman's going to be a hell of a project. He's a big boy with a lot of detail, so I'm trying to work out whether I paint him blue first and then paint the gold, or whether I paint him gold and then paint the blue.
I think the modern day consensus of Gilliman and Thousand Suns is paint them gold and then paint them blue on the inside. And the reason why is I've noticed when I've been doing any kind of like raised edge detail, it's quite easy to do flat areas and to paint into like a panel. Trying to paint the edge of a rim or a lip is very difficult. You can paint the top of it very easily. So you could paint Gilliman, and from a distance, the top parts of all those raised details will be painted like gold. But when you look at it up close, the side of it or edge would still be blue if you painted it blue first. So that's why I think people say spray gold, and then actually with a thin down, almost like not quite a wash, but a much more thinner version of paint, you can literally sort of paint and move it around and make it go to the edge, and it will go up neatly to the sides without spilling over. And then you can also, you know, use washes afterwards to sort of hide any tidy up sort of stuff. Yeah. So I would say that's the way to do it.
It's relatively easy, I guess. It's relatively easy then to kind of, where you've kind of made little mistakes, to kind of put the gold back over the top in those few areas. Yeah. No, I'm starting to agree with that philosophy. But yeah, so working for it, mate. Got a lot to do ahead of the 27th of November. But it's my commitment to get it painted, and then to put it up against your Minotaurs in the who painted the better army contest of RFW.
Exactly. Yeah, I've got my 2 contemptors to paint up, and obviously I'll hopefully be starting this weekend. Although I need to base them as well, so I'll probably spend some of the weekend adding some basing detail. Really annoying. I've stuck them and pinned them down to the bases like flat on, so I can't make more dynamic poses with them, like running up like a piece of concrete or something, not like a vertical wall, but just like a slightly sloped bit of rubble or something. So I'll have to build the bases around them with that in mind, and then when I finally do a different dreadnought, then I might do a more fancy star base. But yeah, I mean, I feel like quite painted out at the moment because I've spent ages painting my Minotaurs for the LGT doubles, then painting up parts of my Krieg for No Retreat. So I painted up my Officer of the Fleet model, which was literally just base sprayed grey before. So I finished him off. I also had my 2 Hades drills. I basically re-weathered the drill pieces and the tracks, so applying mud effects and then graphene pencil to give them a nice silver bit to the track. I did transfers onto the thud guns and the rapiers, and then I weathered both of those as well in the same method of weathering powders and stuff like that. And I also based those as well. So I based the thud guns on some large, I think 80mm bases, and then I based the rapiers, and they look so much better on bases. It's like I almost think all models should be on bases, like all vehicles should probably be on bases. All artillery pieces at least should be. Yeah, it just looks so much nicer on bases. So I managed to do all of those bits. Oh, and I redid the base of my Avenger fighter as well, because that was like a very thinned out base. So I managed to like apply more texturing to it, and then more weathering powders. I didn't get to add any extra detail onto it because I just sort of ran out of time. But yeah, so done all that. So nice to have a little bit of a break before I get on with these Minotaurs, basically.
Yeah, I need to figure out what kind of varnish finish I'm going to go for on them as well. But I'm just going to paint it all and then figure out the varnish side of things at the end. That's the last piece.
You're going to be airbrushing or using a can?
Airbrushing, and then I've learned from my mistakes on the cans.
I mean, I used MiG or Ammo by MiG. They've got called Lucky Varnish. So I've got super matte, and is the other one just a matte, I think, or like a sort of satin style finish. So the satin one is much more like Lamy and medium. It does have a bit of a shine to it, but I quite like the super matte one. It like really, it sort of flattens it all together, but it also merges the paint together really well.
Do you do any gloss varnish first and then dull it down with the super matte, or do you start just go straight onto the matte?
Well, my normal painting method is to like base paint, layer, wash stuff, then I gloss varnish for transfers, then I gloss varnish again. So that'd be everything gloss varnish, and then I'll matte varnish. In between the gloss and the matte varnish, I sometimes do extra things. So on my Minotaurs, I was doing some verdigris, like weathering effects. I think that was the only thing I really did, because that really needs to go on top of the transfers. So sometimes it like goes over the painted bits, or the transfers that are made to look like painted bits. But yeah, basically gloss varnish, then matte varnish or matte finish, basically. And that ties it all together really nicely. Cool. Weirdly, I noticed a bit of a hack with my bases on my Minotaurs, because normally I would do my matte varnish, then I would weathering powder on the top of the sterling texture mud. But weirdly, the super matte kind of makes it look like it's got weathering powder anyway, because it really knocks back all the shine. So for the tournament, nice. I didn't do the weathering powders. I didn't have time, and it looks like it doesn't even need it. I will add them at a later date just to get a bit more color variation in there. But I was like, oh, that's quite a speedy little hack by putting super matte down, because it really makes it look like it's because ultimately the weathering powders are super matte as well, basically. Yeah.
Very good, mate. All right, cool. Well, I reckon that'll do. Massive thank you to all of our patrons. We don't say that enough, but we do mean it. Obviously, thank you to everyone that enables the show from happening. In relation to that, I reckon that'll be us done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh,
goodbye.
Yeah. Oh, we're going. Well,
you can say stuff.
I was going to say we get around to doing some community questions next week. I've been trying to do them the last few weeks, but I've just been so busy with events and stuff. But next week we do community questions, and we ask people.
Yeah, we'll make that a segment in and of itself. When we'll just we'll see what people are curious about, what they want us to rant on the topic of. But until then,
exactly. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.